Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Live Show, Week 11 Recap Edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great night to be great. It's a great night to break down a pretty electric slate of action. I got some cool stuff. All right, 5 games featured the game-winning score on the final play. That was tied for the most on a single day in NFL history. Backup running backs were scoring left and right. Bryce Young, someone who I thought just sucked at football, actually threw for 448 yards and 3 touchdowns. Once again, proving just how little I know about predicting the future in this beautiful sport. Josh Allen, second highest scoring quarterback performance in fantasy since 2015. The guy with the first, also Josh Allen. Funny how that works. Mark Andrews had a 35-yard rushing touchdown. All that and so much more coming at you. Of course, we got plenty of actually actionable fantasy stuff to get to as well. And because of that, we got the best in the business. Dwain, the Rock McFarland's in the house. Happy Sunday night, Dwain.
Happy Sunday night, Ian. I'm looking out my window and you know what? I don't care what anyone thinks. I can see my Christmas lights and that makes me happy. That makes my family happy. Got them put up yesterday, Ian. It was 85 degrees and I looked at the yard and I was like, I need to mow the yard too. That's Texas. You hang your lights and then you mow your yard, man.
My neighborhood is very, I don't know the right word. Everyone celebrates Diwali. So we've actually had lights up for the last month. And I actually respect those people that can just go from blue and white or whatever the colors of Diwali are straight into Christmas. Very fun, festive times indeed. But as we all know, 3 weeks between us and the fantasy playoffs. So as much as it's great to get your lights up like the McFarland family, also want to get those fantasy rosters right. And accordingly, we're going through all the week 11 action to help you do just that. As always, when we are turning the clocks all the way back to Thursday night to start things off, we had the Patriots take down the Jets, 27-14. New England covered as 12.5-point faves. The under did cash at 43.5. Yeah, nice performance from Drake May, 281 yards and a touchdown. He's also figuring out how to not take sacks and just generally be awesome at everything. Mike Vrabel talks about him like a long lost son. Just amazing to see everything that Drake May has done in just such little time in the NFL. Of course, though, Dwain, Travion Henderson, not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns. I don't know about you, but I think one good game definitely makes up for 10 weeks of lackluster performance. How are we feeling, Dwain?
Yeah, 2 good games now. It's funny though, because immediately people point out, the bad yards per carry, which, it happens and I get it. I totally understand it. But yeah, 32.3 PPR points, 92% of the snaps. The man had a 96 utilization score, guys. That's on a scale of 0 to 100. So it's good. We did have Dearness Johnson working behind him as the running back too, Ian. But yeah, right now in games without Ramondre, we have to feel great about Hendo, and then we'll just have to keep our fingers crossed and see what happens once Ramondre Stevenson is back.
Henderson's advanced analytics even starting to become the borderline erotic variety, now averaging 4 yards after contact per carry this season. Only trails Jonathan Taylor and Javonte Williams in that metric. So, Dwain, in our utilization report episode last week, we kind of went through the potential ranges of outcomes. You, again, do a great job with that each and every week. In the utilization report, still kind of feeling more so that tier 2 option where, yeah, Henderson likely should, please, for love of God, have earned more of a 55-45, hopefully even 50-50 split with Andre, but just tough to completely assume that the veteran's going to be out of the picture once he is healthy enough to return.
Yeah, look, if you've got, Travion Henderson on your roster, it's okay to be excited, guys. It's okay to be excited. Just understand that we could see Ramondre Stevenson come back really to the same role that he was in or something similar to that. But there is a chance that Ramondre is really the backup now. He could be 30% snap share, and we would all absolutely love that. All we're saying is you just can't say for sure that is going to happen. So just keep it in mind as you're considering any trades, anything like that. But with Hendo, just it's fun. Let's be excited. We had to wait this long. He's playing good at a minimum, like you said. This puts him more in that low end running back 2 territory, even if Mondre comes back and really has more of a role like what we saw before. A little bit less than that.
Shutting my blinds, putting a little piece of tape on my webcam, and then throwing that Travion Henderson jersey on, baby. What a 2-week stretch it has been. 5 touchdowns in 5 days. Pretty cool if you ask me. Otherwise, great performance from Stephon Diggs, 9 catches for 106 yards. Again, this was one that we were really trying to hype up because of some of the man zone splits. But again, another element of that is the Jets really suck at defense, and so do the Steelers, especially against the pass. So certainly that element goes into things as well. But again, another good, I would say, data point for Stephon Diggs. Kyle Williams, though, Dwain, didn't seem like he exactly, got any sort of a bump up to the starting lineup. He did actually finish 4th on the week in unrealized air yards, which is pretty impressive for someone with only 3 targets out there. I cannot wait to be betting this dude actually next week against the Bengals. 1 catch, over yards, but under the 1.5 reception total. But is he still firmly behind Diggs, Matt Collins, and Demario Douglas?
Yeah, well, not firmly. He had a 78% route participation, which he was
Oh,
the wide receiver 3. There's 3 quick takeaways here on this passing game, right? Number 1, guys, you got to remember Kayshon Boutte was still out. Ian already mentioned Diggs, season high 89% route participation, and he had an 88 utilization score. So if he were to continue doing that, if he were to play in a role that was 85 to 95% route participation rate, with how well he's been playing and with what Drake May's been doing, like, he's going to be a wide receiver too. We just don't know every week if they're going to play him in that kind of capacity, but it's worth noting it was a season high for Stephon Diggs. Mac Hollins has taken over the Kayshon Boutte role for now. We'll see what happens when Boutte comes back. I would anticipate him getting that role, but that means you're the guy running down the field with the 19.4 average depth of target, and you're going to have a chance to get the air yards and potentially a touchdown. Hollins had 4 catches for 64 yards in this one. And then the other one is Williams. He had a 78% route participation with a 9% target share. So right now, with Kayshon Boutte out, he's the wide receiver 3. I think if you have Kayshon Boutte back, he's probably the wide receiver 4 because they do like having Mac Hollins on the field because the dude is you ever watch him block DBs, dude?
oh my
Like
God.
he's like a tight end, bro. Like he is just ragdolling people. Like I was going back to watch some of Diggs, and I started watching Hollins, because I talked about him being a good run blocker, and yeah, like I see why they like him out there on the field when they run the ball so much.
I just remember they showed him in like training camp with the Dolphins, 4 or 5 years ago, and he was just standing next to someone and was like, good God, this guy is a freak among freaks out there, just pure physical stature wise. So good stuff from Mac. 45 more scoreless yards from Hunter Henry, just 1 touchdown since week 4, firmly in that touchdown dependent tight end 2 category. But hey, Dwayne, I will give him a pretty good chance at finding the end zone here next week against the Bengals. Certainly a matchup where, any sort of offensive playmaker is liable to go find the end zone, particularly tight ends. Over with those New York Jets, Justin Fields and company drove right down the field and scored on their first drive. They were actually using Fields' legs, and he went ahead and scored a touchdown on his own. After that, whole lot of more or less bad just offensive performance. All right, Fields actually only took 2 sacks in this one, which is pretty good for him, but also lost a fumble and just generally held the ball too long and or was erratic when he did decide to throw it. That said, Adonai Mitchell was getting open enough for Fields to actually find him, but not once, not twice, on 3 separate occasions. Mitchell actually did drop well-thrown passes from Fields. So not completely on Fields, but okay, Dwayne, let's go ahead and really give him the benefit of the doubt here. We go from 116 yards to 150 at this point. So I was happy to see AD Mitchell continue to prove that he can get open even against a great corner like Christian Gonzalez. But man, I know that drops aren't sticky, Dwayne, but it just seems like they are for some guys, and they happen to be named Dontavian Wicks and AD Mitchell.
Well, look, I mean, it's hard to argue against it at this point for the specific player. We just know that typically when you zoom out, that stuff does go away. This is all I'm going to say on it. At this point, if I am rostering any receiver from the Jets, any pass catcher at this point, even when we talk about Mason Taylor, he went into a split role with Ruckert back. So you can drop Mason Taylor. What's the point in Mason Taylor at this point? If I were to roster any player not named Breece Hall right now that's on the Jets, it would still be AD Mitchell because he does get open. He does have that big playability. And if he were to get hot, he might actually be worth something if you're in a deep league. I just have a hard time thinking that any of these other players are going to be anyone we would ever want to play in fantasy other than Breece Hall.
Luckily, Breece Hall, 72% snap rate, 14 carries, and 2 targets in this one. No, didn't find the end zone. That is life inside this sad excuse for a professional offense with the Jets. That honor actually went to John Mechie, now on the Jets, in case you guys didn't know that. But yeah, guys, Breece Hall and otherwise just really tough to get excited. Again, we saw Justin Fields put a good fantasy performance together. Honestly, I was surprised he made it through the entire game without getting benched. Just figured Aaron Glenn would be ready to do that. Wouldn't be surprised if he does do that next week in Baltimore against the Ravens. Once again, Breece Hall will be the only guy we want to go near in fantasy at all. Moving on to the last international game of the year, Sunday morning kickoff in Madrid. The Dolphins took down the Commanders 16-13, despite some curious late game decision making, if you will, particularly near the goal line. Miami did cover though as 2.5-point faves, the under cash at 47.5. So 171 scoreless yards from Tua Tagovailoa, just 52 for Jalen Waddle. It just kind of sucks, Dwayne. Devon Achane went nuts, 120 rushing yards, 45 receiving. Could have been a bigger game. He got tackled at the 1-yard line on 3 separate occasions over the course of 2 different drives. So really could have had a nice afternoon at the office. You'll still take the 165 yards, but just disappointing overall in what was supposed to be a smash matchup against the lowly Commanders.
Yeah, but it is the beauty of Achane. You didn't get the touchdowns, and he still gave you 21.5 PPR points. And so you're just kind of like, you're mad about it. And then you look at it, you're like, I got 21 points. I mean, what am I going to complain about? Waddle was the bigger disappointment just because really the Commanders secondary has just been completely cooked, like really all season, but over the last month, like with the injuries and stuff they've really had problems. But the way the game script worked out, it just really wasn't forced to continue on. He got off to a hot start right out of the gate. He caught the first pass of the game. You thought, okay, like this is going to be good for Waddle. He had a 35% target share. They just didn't throw the ball that often today. They used a lot of heavy personnel, used their fullback Alec Ingold a lot. They were using their 2 tight end set stuff. Like Nick Westbrook-Akini only had a 22% route participation rate. Like they weren't even using 3 wide receivers. So it was good for Tua because, his yards per attempt were up at 8.6, even though he only threw for 171 yards. But ultimately, that decrease in volume, in the play volume and the amount of times they were throwing the balls, ultimately what ended up getting Waddle. Like the target share and all that stuff was there. The nice thing was it was still downfield stuff, 13.7 average depth of target, 96 air yards a day for Waddle. So he's going to be fine. But we just thought this was a really good matchup spot for him. So it was really hoping for a 20-pointer from Mr. Waddle today.
2 official charge drops as well for Waddle did not help his cause. Wound up only seeing Ollie Gordon find his way into the end zone. Happened to vulture Achane when he got down the 1-yard line. Hate to see that happen. Dwain, Dolphins have a bye next week. Darren Waller is technically eligible to return after that. We don't really know if he will. Mike McDaniel just said he didn't believe the injury was of the season-ending variety. So Greg Dulcich, I should say, still in that full-time role for the time being.
70% route participation with a 20% target share today. Yeah, so he was.
Not horrible. We'll keep him on the 32-team squad. Thank you for putting up with me there. Over to the Commanders. Marcus Mariota got banged up throughout, the game. Ended up, I think, getting checked for concussion attempt briefly. Did come back out and return. Honestly, played pretty well until he tossed out an unfortunate interception in overtime. 213 yards, a touchdown to Deebo Samuel on a nicely designed screen pass. Also chipped in 49 rushing yards. He had like a 45-yard rush where you're like, oh yeah, Marcus Mariota, he can still do that even in his early 30s at this point. So good enough stuff there, and he'll continue to be on that streaming map. It does really sound like the Commanders would like to see Jaden Daniels get back out there. Again, we'll get more information on that after the bye. So good from Deebo Samuel. Could see a returning Terry McLaurin after the bye. But hey, honestly, this was the most yards Deebo has had in quite some time. Even showed a little bit of juice, though. So he's honestly had that toe, or it's a calf injury right over these past few weeks. So maybe a better rested Deebo will be ready to do good things in week 13 and beyond. It did seem like, though, Dwayne, the real fantasy relevant note for Washington was Chris Rodriguez starting to lead this backfield.
Yeah, and we still have the 3-way split, though, but instead of it being Bill leading the committee, today it was Chris Rodriguez, which is also what we saw last week in the small sample before he got hurt. So we really now have 2 games where, if we account the beginning of last week, where Rodriguez was the lead back. Now, still 45% of the snaps, because you had 27% going to Bill and 25% going to Jeremy McNichols. So ultimately, we need this thing to really narrow down to two guys to feel very confident about it, because we also have Marcus Mariota, who had 9% of the design rushing attempts today. And if Jaden Daniels comes back, we know he's going to have part of the design rushing attempts. So really, this is a 4-headed rushing attack on an offense that's just not very good. So it's a positive for Rodriguez. If you were to roster a running back from the Commanders right now, like Rodriguez is the guy. He handled almost 50% of the attempts today. He had 60% of the snaps inside the 5, which was 3 of them. Not very involved in the passing game, but still 28% route participation. Like he was out there doing a little bit, but 3-way rotation. But he's the lead of the committee. That running back, mid-range running back 3, like that's basically like the best we can say about a player like this, unless he expands his role. He did play good, 5.3 yards per carry today, and like he's looked pretty good like in his opportunities this year.
Rodriguez and McNichols both got stopped at the 1-yard line, failed to score a touchdown on the drive. Look, guys, I understand that when we're saying, hey, mid-range RB3, yeah, that's not very exciting. It could be a nice boost, though, come the fantasy playoffs when we do see the Commanders get the Giants in week 15 and the Cowboys in week 17. So just keep an eye on this situation. I do imagine we'll see Chris Rodriguez and Bill Crosby-Merritt hitting some waiver wires during the bye. If you do have room on the bench, I don't think it would be the worst idea to try to stash one in the hope that we see even more clarity as the season goes on. Moving moving on to regularly scheduled Sunday afternoon action, Dwayne. We had the Jaguars beat down the Chargers, surprisingly here, 35-6. Jacksonville winning outright as 3-point dogs. The under did cash, though, at 43.5. So just a $1.53 from Trevor Lawrence. Obviously saw maybe a few more drops. The Jaguars are tied with the Broncos for a league high 26 drops. The interception was not great, trying to force the Tim Patrick on the sideline. So yeah, man, did end up throwing a touchdown to Tim Patrick. So that was cool because I appreciate Tim Patrick. He even did Drew Lock's, it's backpack celebration. It was like a collision of just worlds that I probably only care about, Dwayne. So I'll shut up now. But man, big story here was the backfield. Travis Etienne, pair of touchdowns. However, it was not going easy for Etienne. It sure seemed like there was a lot of baseball tooting originally, Dwayne. Unfortunately, the rookie suffered an ankle injury. And man, he was running hard and looking hot. Like, what sort of split were we seeing between Etienne and Tootin before the injury?
Yeah, Bajal Tootin was injured on the 7th drive. So over the first 6 drives of the game, snaps 41% for Tootin, 51% for Etienne. So it was still Etienne in the lead. But if you look at the rushing attempts, it was 44% for each guy. So it was much closer in that department. And then the route participation was still going to Etienne even before the injury. He had a 50% versus 19% for Tootin. So those would have been season highs, though, had the game continued on, assuming they kept him in the same role. That snap share and that rushing attempt share would have been season highs for Tootin. So I think we can expect a little bit of a larger role. And mainly, it wasn't so much Etienne that it was coming from. They weren't using LaQuint Allen. LaQuint Allen, over that same period, he only had 8% of the snaps. And, it's mostly the long down and distance stuff. So he's not really, he wasn't impacting the rushing attempts. But he does still some occasionally in some of the games in the past. And we didn't see that today until after Tootin was out of the game. So, yeah, I think it's a bright spot. And the main thing is what you said, like he was playing really well in the interview after the game. He was talking about how he thought it was his best performance. Didn't seem to be too worried, about the ankle injury. So we'll just kind of have to keep an eye on that. But yeah, I would say this is an upgrade for Tootin, assuming that he is healthy. It won't be a huge upgrade, but it's like it'll be a small bump for him. And honestly, I don't. It's going to be like a small bump down from Etienne, but it really wasn't coming so much from Etienne in this game. It was coming more from Allen.
It's a great note because originally just kind of peeping the box score and seeing, the highlights on Red Zone here didn't quite crack my quad box here in the Hartitz household. It seemed like Tootin was getting a lot more of the action. Yeah, relative to what he was getting, as you explained, that was the case, but more so LaQuint Allen falling out of favor. So I saw that postgame interview too. I feel like when guys had major injuries, they usually don't let them do postgame interviews. As Dwayne and I try to repeat, we are not certified doctors, so do not take our words for it as we record this on Sunday evenings. Hopefully get more info on Monday. But yeah, man, at a minimum, it's just another very good example of that. Yeah, Bajal Tootin, one injury or lottery ticket to Travis Etienne away from being on the cover of every single waiver wire article and likely a top 15 option the rest of the season. Otherwise, Dwayne, last question I have was just, did we see a full-time role for Jakobi Meyers, who unfortunately is still scoreless this season?
Yeah, very close. 83% route participation. That was second on the team, 92% for Parker Washington. But Myers gave you 11.4 PPR points, so getting into that wide receiver 4 kind of territory. Led the team with a 27% target share, had 6 targets on the day. So yeah, looks like he's acclimating pretty quickly. Washington took a step back out there in the full-time role, guys, but only gave you 4 PPR points today. And then Tim Patrick, who I put out an under on for under 2.5 catches. He did catch 3, I believe, today. No, actually, I think he had 4 targets and he caught 3 of them to hit the over. And like Ian said, one of them was it was a touchdown. So
that's what you get for doubting Tim Patrick, Dwayne.
That's right. I knew I should have never doubted Tim Patrick.
If you're looking for a shoulder to cry on, bro, you're not going to find one right here. So could have some returning players, some injury. Brenton Strange is getting closer. And also Brian Thomas Jr. was questionable in this one and managing to practice in a limited fashion last week. So could throw a wrench in things. I think, Dwayne, it will be Brian Thomas Jr., Jakobi Meyers, and I'd like to think Parker Washington keeps the job, but that's kind of the toss-up, man. They might just like Diami Brown and what he kind of does, on the side a bit more. What
they're not using Diami, though. I mean, 25% routes this week. Last week, they had him in a limited role. Now, he's been battling some injuries, so we can't always know for sure, like with some of these players that have been battling through stuff. But I have a feeling it's going to be Parker Washington really playing the Travis Hunter role because he's getting a lot of this underneath stuff, right? Gets to work from the slot. I think Myers will rotate into the slot some, but will be your starting other outside wide receiver opposite of BTJ with Tim Patrick and Brown rotating through. So I don't think any of these guys are going to be at like 95% route participations. Like I think we could see all of them in like the low 80s. And we saw that actually earlier in the season, even whenever we had Travis Hunter and BTJ and Diami Brown was actually running good. So we've actually seen Liam Cohen show a willingness to rotate these guys. And I think that is what we will see. I would still expect BTJ to have the highest route participation rate once he's fully healthy. But even he, I don't think is immune. I don't know that we'll see him back over 90%. They were already starting to bring that down before his injury.
Jaguars are going to be traveling to Arizona to take on the Cardinals next week. We'll see if they can put together a nice scoring performance. Otherwise, with the Chargers, they have a bye next week. We're going to see, hopefully, Omar and Hampton get back in the action, so we have a bit of time to kind of see what happens here. But I'm willing to mostly throw this one out, Dwayne, and just say this is a good example of maybe not to get too high up in our hopes when we're talking about an offense that is just so down bad when it comes to offensive line injuries. Because this is what can happen, man. 135 total yards. Their previous season low was 314. The Chargers have not had less total yards than they had today since 2003, man. So just, again, atrocious. Only 22 minutes time possession. I'm more or less willing to throw it out. But just keeping in mind that we can't be treating the Chargers like they're the 99 Rams, because these things can happen when you don't have an offensive line.
Absolutely. I think we can move on here. The only thing I'll say is, we had the Vidal thigh injury. To your point, we don't know when Omari and Hampton will be back. We're hoping that it's after the bye that he can come back and do his thing. But if not, just so folks know, Travion Williams was the guy that came in and took over after Vidal got injured on the 7th drive, and he handled 79% of the snaps. So if you're in an absolute sicko league or in a league with Ian with 32 teams, Travion Henderson might be a name.
No, you said Travion Henderson.
Travion Williams.
Cool.
Travion Henderson. Yeah, Travion Williams. My bad. Yeah, former Texas A&M Aggie, Travion Williams.
Former Cincinnati Bengals. Speaking of, we'll move on to the Steelers taking down the Bengals 34-12. Pittsburgh covering with ease as 5.5-point faves. The under did cash here at 48. So another game that we're going to talk about. A lot of injuries here. Aaron Rodgers suffered a left hand / wrist injury. The early reports are that it was in fact a fracture to his left wrist. It is being called a small fracture though, Dwayne. And per rap sheet, Rodgers has indicated to people close to him that he'll be back soon. And the initial belief is nothing long term. That said, Adam Schefter come out and said that he is expecting Mason Rudolph to start for the Steelers ahead of their Week 12 matchup against the Chicago Bears. So just wondering, because again, you and Freeman always do a great job with our projections, and it drives into a lot of our prop bets and everything like that. Aaron Rodgers versus Mason Rudolph. Are you really going to shave off that much passing yardage from this team total?
Probably not, just because it's not like Rodgers has been where it will get shaved is the passing touchdowns. Like he
isn't at 250 in a game this year.
Right. That's what I'm saying. With Rodgers, like I project him pretty much every week, depending on the matchup, somewhere in between like 205 and 215. And I'm usually on the under versus what Vegas has, not by a ton, by like 5 yards, but I'm pretty comfortable with it because it's Arthur Smith, and I'm always like, I'm fine just taking the under on Aaron Rodgers when I project it. But with the big thing though is Aaron Rodgers had been averaging 2 passing touchdowns per game. He already had 1 when he got knocked out of this game after only 15 attempts today. So I will not expect that from Mason Rudolph. Like I think we'd probably be projecting more like 1.4 passing touchdowns. With Rodgers, I was usually projecting like 1.7 to 1.8. So that'll be the biggest difference. So it does hurt the pass catchers a little bit, but at the same time, the yardage should be pretty close. Receptions will end up being pretty close as well.
1 passing touchdown from Aaron Rodgers and Mason Rudolph, both to Kenneth Gainwell, who went off for his second biggest performance of the season. Unfortunately, because Jaylen Warren left early with an ankle injury, he returned for 1 play and then was not able to continue throughout. So was playing great before, man. Honestly, was converting 12 touches into 67 yards, forced 6 missed tackles, tied for the 4th most of the week, had a run where he was, reversing across field, trying to jump over dudes and then just stiff arm him, and that didn't work. Like Jaylen Warren going into this game was second behind only Omari and Hampton in tackles avoided per touch. Really, really hope he is okay. But I mean, Dwayne, we saw it in that London game when Warren was a late scratch. A lot of people, unfortunately, didn't wake up in time to get Kenneth Gainwell in there, and then he went bonkers. I mean, Kenneth Gainwell, even if he hasn't really offered much flex value since then, I mean, we saw what he could do as a legit handcuff. Do you still have that, comfortability that he will be kind of the running back y'all behind Warren, or do you think Caleb Johnson could be a bit bigger of a thorn in the side than he was last time around?
No, I feel really good about Gainwell. I think Johnson will have a role, but today, after Warren's injury and the drives that Warren didn't play, 16.6 fantasy points on those drives for Gainwell, 69% of the snaps, 60% of the rushing attempts. So he really dominated. Dude, it was like a 4-drive sample, but he had a 57% target share on those 4 drives. So it's really small, but
Rudolph just dunked it down.
Yeah. I mean, the point being is like Kenneth Gainwell, we just know like he had an 18% target share on the day. Like he's very active in the passing game. This is a good player, man. Like I know he's not built probably to the standards of people that want a guy that can handle, 300 touches. And I understand that. But he is an electric playmaker. He's good out of the backfield as a receiver. He's been good down inside the 5-yard line this year. So I would expect him to be the lead back. We had Caleb Johnson after the Warren injury get 31% of the snaps and 40% of the attempts. So it was clearly Kenneth Gainwell the one, but looking at really Johnson kind of more in a role like what we just talked about with Tootin, so probably bigger than what people think. So I think that would make Caleb Johnson, though, still that's like running back 4 territory because he's not very involved in the pass game. He only had a 14% route share, doesn't really catch balls. And they like using Gainwell down inside the 10-yard line. Like theoretically, you would be like, well, maybe they'll use the big back Caleb Johnson down there. But we have no guarantees of that because Mr. Gainwell has played really well in the green zone and in the red zone this year.
I know a lot of people, Kenneth Gainwell was just, okay, that backup from the Eagles that made his way to Pittsburgh to be a backup. Guys, Dwain and I are old enough to remember back in the day, Kenneth Gainwell was a twitchy, explosive, dual threat, day 3 rookie who we were hoping could find his way into a bigger role. And no, it didn't really happen during his first pit stop of his career. Certainly seems like it could be on the table here in Pittsburgh again.
And just real quick,
missing time.
I don't know what for sure was going to happen, but even before the Jaylen Warren injury, Gainwell already had a larger role. And I don't know if it was due to the matchup. He had 57% of the snaps before Jaylen Warren got hurt. He had 29% of the rushing attempts versus 48% for Warren, but he was the passing down guy. He had a 77% route participation before Jaylen Warren left the game. So I think the Steelers clearly prefer Gainwell.
Was that
Johnson
just real
get
quick,
35, 40% of the carries.
I know you're working with it. Haven't had a chance to go drive by drive because he missed like 2 or 3 drives. Warren did, and then he came back for 1 more snap. So could that maybe be messing with that a little bit?
I took the first time Warren got knocked out and went before that. Yeah.
Okay. In that case, then fantastic, man. And we talked about the schedule for Warren being awesome. Again, they played the Bengals today. That was obviously great. Bears, Bills, Ravens, Dolphins over these next 4 weeks. I mean, again, Dwayne Wall, waiver wires and stuff like that. But you're at this point in the season, you need a running back. And if we have any iota of belief that Jaylen Warren is going to be missing, multi-week of absence, like Kenneth Gainwell, go get him.
He's a running back too, man. We'll have to decide like where we put him. Like we go through this every week, and sometimes it depends on how many teams are on bye. But because he's so good as a pass catcher, that really insulates him a lot, like from the bad game scripts and stuff like that, which is something we're always looking for. So,
and we feel better about Gainwell's receiving usage than Warren because Warren had to deal with Gainwell. We don't have that same concern here with Caleb Johnson, who, could get some more early down work, but will not be a threat in the passing game. Speaking of Caleb Johnson, just 15 rushing yards. He did break a nice 13-yard run, but just, man, this dude cannot catch a break. He actually got it nullified on a face mask by himself as he was trying to stiff arm the defender. So Caleb Johnson, man, he's reached the point where I just want to see this dude break off a big run. He deserves something nice to happen to him. Otherwise, DK Metcalf, 49 yards on 8 targets, had a 30-yard catch from Rudolph down the sideline, getting nullified on a pretty ticky-tacky OPI, if you ask me, aka biased DK Metcalf fantasy manager. But otherwise, Dwayne, just a big story. Good God, Darnell Washington. He was jumping over people. He was throwing defenders out of the club. Like, this dude is so much fun to watch. Again, I continue to wonder why he doesn't just put his hand in the ground, play tackle, and make an extra $10 million or so per year for himself and his family. But as long as we continue to have an offense and Arthur Smith willing to throw him the ball, man, it is a lot of fun to watch. I'm guessing, though, Dwayne, because it is Arthur Smith and the Steelers, we probably still have 4 tight ends muddling things around, so we can't trust any of them in fantasy land.
This is very true. 61% route participation for today for Washington. But like, if you guys watched Washington in college, this was the thing that we talked about. We're like, look, he was never like this super high end, like target earner, but man, when he had his opportunities, what he would do after the catch, like, was just like a highlight reel. And you guys got to see it today. I saw somebody's tweet said somebody call an ambulance, which I thought was like the perfect tweet for Darnell Washington. But then you had Jonnu Smith getting 55% of the routes, Pat Freiermuth getting 42%. So you can't trust any of these tight ends here. It would be really cool though if you got to pick one of these guys that you got to see in a full-time role, I would so like just because it's so interesting, I would want it to be Darnell Washington. Like, could you imagine Darnell Washington with an 85% route participation rate? It might not go well, but I would just like to see it. I would just like to test that theory out.
Do you know how crazy good you have to be with the football in your hands, yak wise, for us to not even like worry about Jonnu Smith? I mean, Jonnu Smith is supposed to be like the freakiest yak tight end in the league, or at least up there. And Darnell Washington makes him a complete afterthought in the equation. So love the ambulance call. Dwayne, I think Darnell Washington like is the ambulance. He's the ambulance in those old Madden games when he used to run over dudes on the field.
Oh my God, yeah. I forgot about the old Madden ambulance that would run over the players leaving the field. Yeah. Good call out by you. Only other thing I'll say on this passing attack, it was Roman Wilson working ahead of Calvin Austin today. 64% routes for Wilson, 36% for Austin. Not that you guys are getting to that excited about it, but some of you playing just absolute sicko gross leagues like Ian. So I just throw that out there.
Guys, only stick to Roman Wilson and mop-up duty of Sunday night football games. That's the only time we're playing him at this point. Again, Steelers get the Bengals here next week. Steelers get the Bears next week. Sorry. Bengals, now we're talking about them. Joe Flacco came crashing back down to earth. I think even with this dud, he's still a top 4 quarterback since he took over under center in fantasy points per game. So wouldn't completely rule out, a bounce back coming forward. Again, they get the Patriots here next week. But yeah, 199 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick six to Kyle Duggar, where he just literally did not see the dude try to throw the T. Higgins over the middle, and that was a bad idea. And the good news was he did find T. Higgins on a crosser that kind of turned vertical for a touchdown, but that really wound up being the only big source of offense on the afternoon. So I do think getting Kyle Duggar, moving Jalen Ramsey back to safety has maybe helped make the Steelers defense be a little bit better, and they were also home in their second divisional matchup, so not going to completely freak out. And of course, we shouldn't expect Joe Flacco to be lights out each and every day, but just something to keep in mind. I think the big story here, Dwayne, obviously we can talk about Chase Brown in a second, but I think Jamar Chase is going to be suspended a game for spitting, at Jalen Ramsey. They showed the video afterwards, and it sure did. I saw spit. I'm assuming the refs are going to see it too. We had the Jalen Carter issue before week 1, and they basically said that because he was kicked out of that game, that counted as suspension. I don't think we're getting Jamar Chase this next week. How about you?
Yeah, it's a possibility, man. I mean, I hope that doesn't happen just for all the Jamar Chase owners. But man, if you spit on somebody, you deserve to be suspended. Like you just, I know he denied it, but yeah, the video is pretty clear. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, in that case, obviously T. Higgins, steps into a bigger role. Really, there's not anyone else in the passing game we can get that excited about. Noah Fant's sharing time with the other guys. Yoshi Voss, not a high-end target earner, so that'd be a big game.
Tinsley,
for T. Higgins.
Next guy up?
Yeah, Tinsley, but I don't know. It would be hard for me to recommend anyone to start Tinsley. You know what I mean? Yeah. But he would technically be the next guy, but they have some other guys they could rotate with him as well. The only other thing I'll say about Flacco is, remember, guys, this was one of the weather games. A lot of wind, a lot of different stuff going on. So, and that was the case like in Buffalo and some other games as well. Some quarterbacks obviously impacted more than others.
There was some bad wind going on. We talked about that a lot in our morning session of the Fantasy Life show. Appreciate everyone that came and hung out with that. Last thing, Dwayne, sure seemed like Chase Brown was getting fed the rock again. Maybe not 90% plus snaps, but pretty close.
83% of the snaps, 18 rushing attempts, and 8 targets. 26 opportunities is a good thing. Gave you 18.7 PPR points today. It was Taj Brooks working behind him with 11% of the snaps, and then Kendall Milton, 5% of the snaps behind him. So we'll see what happens with P. Ryan, inactive for this game with the high ankle sprain. That happened back before the bye, so that's 2 weeks ago now. Did not practice last week, though, Ian, so if I'm remembering correctly. So we'll have to wait and see what P. Ryan does early this week. But Chase Brown also just looking good, man. Like actually making people miss, getting north and south really quickly, like making his one cut and then getting down the field. Looks much more explosive than what we're seeing. Just honestly just looks like he's more confident at this point than what we were seeing early in the season. So not only is he getting the playing time, actually looks a lot better right now.
Doesn't have to look over his shoulder for Samaje Perine after every single good play he makes now. So funny how that can work. 6 missed tackles forced, though, on the afternoon. As you mentioned, Dwain tied for the 4th most of the week with Mr. Jaylen Warren. So, yeah, great stuff from Chase Brown. Had a nice, 35 or so yard run, too, where you're reminded, oh, yeah, this dude is probably the fastest man on the field at any given moment. So, good stuff in that matchup. Moving right along, though, on the Fantasy Live show, we had the Packers take down the Giants 27-20. Giants did cover us 7.5-point dogs. Over did cash in this one at 41.5. So Packers with the dub still only had a little bit over 24 minutes time possession. Jordan Love 174 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air, both of which went to Christian Watson, a pair of nice contested snags, which was great to see. Obviously, coming back from that knee injury, he's been flashing a little bit these first couple games back, but this was really his first true boom performance. So Watson did his thing. Romeo Doubs, had opportunities for more. Unfortunately, 2 big drops that probably could have added another 30 or so yards to his 53 scoreless yard stat line. So we know Doubs and Watson are doing their things. Dwain, however, we did have a returning Matthew Golden. Was he the clear-cut number 3, or is there still just a ton of Savion Williams and these other guys going around?
Yeah, my takeaways for this were Doubs and Watson are the clear wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 at this point. Golden, 38% route participation today. Now, coming back from the shoulder injury, so we don't know for sure, but that was the wide receiver 4. So he worked behind Dontavian Wicks, who had a 55% route participation. So we might see that flip in the next couple of weeks. I mean, in my opinion, though, the real thing here, knowing that we're also potentially going to be getting Jaden Reed back at some point here before long, it's Doubs, it's Watson. We'll see what happens when Reed gets back. But all these players are all cuttable besides Doubs and Watson. I'm just kind of done with it all. If you're in a deeper league, you need to keep them. Great. Luke Musgrave, not a starter anymore. He's now in a 3-way rotation. 35% routes today for him. I look up, make sure he didn't get hurt. Couldn't find anything on it. 41% to John Fitzpatrick, and then Josh Wiley had a 31% route participation rate. So we've just
touchdown.
And a touchdown. So musical chairs going on at the tight end room. So that's completely worthless at this point. So as far as the receivers go, Doubs, Watson, those are the 2 main startable assets. Everything else is either bench or cut.
I think I actually lied. Love threw 1 to Watson, 1 to Wiley. Malik Willis actually was the one who threw the short touchdown, I believe, to Christian Watson there. He was in for about half of a drive as Jordan Love was getting his left shoulder checked out. He came back in and seemed to be no worse for the wear. However, the same was not true for Mr. Josh Jacobs. Was having himself a nice day, 7 carries, 40 yards, even got stopped at the 1-yard line twice, failed to score a touchdown, though, and then left early with a knee injury. So good news and bad news, Wayne. The good news is it's not considered to be a season ender, and the Packers are optimistic Jacobs will, quote, be back soon. It does sound like, though, again, when you say be back soon, that would imply that you are going to be missing some time. So if we are assuming that Josh Jacobs will be missing at least a week or 2, sure seems like Emmanuel Wilson is that next guy up. And it's something that we've talked about really for the last several weeks as him being one of the cheaper and just most least roster, I should say, handcuffs out there that you could add to your bench. So hopefully you were able to do that. But we didn't really have a data point, Dwayne. There was the Cardinals game where Jacobs was, kind of playing banged up throughout that. What did we actually see from Emmanuel Wilson in this one? And are you more confident than ever that he is the true handcuff to Jacobs?
Yeah, and Emmanuel Wilson is available in 92% of Yahoo leagues right now. So we're talking about a player that's available in a lot of your leagues. 13 point. So after the Josh Jacobs injury, which happened on the second drive, late in the second drive, down, close to the goal line, Wilson had 13.9 PPR points, 94% of the snaps, 100% of the rushing attempts, all the work inside the 5, and a 73% route participation, which is the main thing I wanted to check in on, because they also have Chris Brooks, who's a good receiver out of the backfield. But Brooks, after that injury, had a 0% route participation. He was out there for 9% of the snaps. They were 3rd and long situations. So basically, Brooks played the long down and distance work, and then Wilson had everything else. Small sample, guys, but we've actually seen this building over the last month, which is kind of why we've been telling you, hey, he's really Emmanuel Wilson's he's emerged as one of these really good handcuffs, not quite in the same range as some of the other guys like a Tyler Algier, but really at the bottom of a tier like that. And so you're going to have to be aggressive on him. And the thing is, Ian, we won't know. But when a coach tells you something like this, Josh Jacobs could still miss 3 or 4 games, right? I mean, look at how long this thing with Bucky Irving has drug on. We just don't know. It could be 1 game, but you could end up, if you end up with Emmanuel Wilson in your starting lineup for 4 weeks, man, he's going to help you. He's going to help you a lot. So my advice is, if you really need a running back, like you're going to have to be aggressive on Emmanuel Wilson. If you have Josh Jacobs, you're the Josh Jacobs manager, like then you're going to be, then it's easy to be aggressive on Emmanuel Wilson because it's like, okay, great. If I only get him for 2 games, what do I care? I get Josh Jacobs back, right? And I get to put him in the lineup. The only note I'll add is we don't know when Marshawn Lloyd is going to return. We do know that he's at least been spotted at practice. Ian, I think he did get his picture with a newspaper next to him, so we know that he's alive. But he could be the only potential fly in the ointment. But also at this point, like I don't even know that he'll be a thing when he comes back because he's always hurt. And Wilson has played good in his opportunities.
It's one of those things where the last thing we had heard was LaFleur saying they had sent Lloyd out west to get some tests done. And so, yeah, hopefully things have gone well. But Dwain is correct. November 13th, he actually was spotted working off the side in practice alongside Jaden Reed. So hopefully Marshawn Lloyd gets back soon. Again, I drafted that dude so freaking much the last 2 years. I believe in the talent, but I'm with you, Dwain. Like, he was there for one preseason game. LaFleur tried to load him up, and he immediately got injured again. So even in some world where Lloyd is activated and he's actually active on game day, 2 gigantic leaps of faith there. I just don't see him taking away the starting job from Wilson right now. So going into this week, guys, like the RB1 borderline, at least in my ranks, RB like 11 through RB 13, it was Kyren Williams, Derrick Henry, Jalen Warren, and Travion Henderson. I mean, I don't think Emmanuel Wilson necessarily jumps past those guys, Dwain. We had Chase Brown, Rico Dowdle there too. But the next gap was Quinshon Judkins, Aaron Jones, RJ Harvey, Breece Hall. Like, I think that's exactly where Gainwell and Emmanuel Wilson comfortably fit into. And we're going to be thrilled to start either guy.
Yeah, mid-range running back too. We'll sort out exactly where here as we dig more into the matchups and all the other injuries and stuff, heading into this week. But definitely in that running back 2 conversation, and could be a borderline running back 1, man. Wilson's played well. Gave you the 14 points today after Jacobs left the game. Like, he could easily give you 18 to 20 points. We're talking about an offense that is committed to running the ball. I know they've had some challenges over the last few weeks, but it's a well-designed offense. It's got a good play caller. They've got a good quarterback. There's a lot of things here to like about the situation for Emmanuel Wilson.
Packers get the Vikings next week. Keep an eye on Romeo Doubs throughout practice. He got taken off the sideline a couple times. He's just honestly been banged up the last few weeks. I don't know why they still insist on using him as a punt returner. I am not an NFL head coach, though, contrary to popular belief. So, yeah, just remember that. Over with the New York Football Giants, it was the Jameis Winston show. And again, he gave the Packers a battle, guys. Like, he threw basically the game-ending interception into the end zone late in the game, which is basically all you can ask for from the Jameis Winston experience. So he got a quarterback sneak for a touchdown. He also got a 10-yard quarterback sneak in the middle of the field, Dwain, which is something you don't see every day. Also lost a fumble, but man, was his typical Jameis self, willing to throw the ball down the field. I saw Wan'Dale Robinson catch, a good 15-yard crosser. We had Isaiah Hodgins back from wherever the heck Isaiah Hodgins has been over the last few years. Once again, doing good things, wearing blue, 57 yards, caught 5 of 6 targets. It did seem like it was Hodgins, Dwain, who was the biggest beneficiary of Darius Slayton missing this one with a hamstring injury.
Yeah, 81% route participation gave you 10.7 PPR points, had a 21% target share. We'll have to wait and see what's up with Slayton. Wouldn't be surprised, though, if he missed another game. And if he did, Hodgins for you complete, sickos. Like, he could be a name that we are talking about at some point next week.
Giants got the Lions next week. Obviously not going to be signing up for that one. We did hear some stuff about Jackson Dart, who seemed to be in good spirits on the sideline, presumably has a chance to return this next week. Maybe they try to give him, till after the bye to get right. But Dwayne, there were reports coming about the Giants basically hoping to, kind of curb back some of Jackson Dart's rushing volume. Yeah. It sure did seem like a lot of that was Brian Dable induced, but are you going to meaningfully change your ranks or at least be a little more cautious with Dart, in his first game or two back?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing to do is just take down some of his design rushing attempts, because that's the part the coach can really control. It's also when the player is going to be at most risk of just really taking a huge hit. When you're scrambling, quite often, like the defenders have turned their back, you see the angle that you need. You also can very clearly see when you need to slide, which Jackson Dart needs to do, and he needs to do it sooner. So I'm not going to mess with his scramble rate, but probably bring down his design rushing attempts by a couple of percentage points, and we'll just kind of see where that all shakes out. He could also just come out and run the ball as much as ever, and maybe it's more of them just coaching him to, hey, get down. So we'll see what ends up happening. It's a really interesting run game at this point. Tyrone Tracy gave you 17.9 PPR points today, and Devin Singletary also gave you 17.7 PPR points. Who saw today from the Giants, you guys basically getting, what do we got here? 35 PPR points, between, those two guys, or no, sorry, like 30 PPR points, a little over 30. Sorry. I can't add 34 PPR points, but 52% snaps to Tracy, 48% to Singletary. So it was like that even split. More of the carries went to Tracy, 51%. Versus 43% for Singletary, but it was an even split on the route participation stuff. Tracy had a 14% target share today. So Tracy had 19 carries plus 4 targets in this game. Singletary had 16 carries and 1 target. Obviously, we know it's the Giants offense. There's no way that's sustainable. That those two guys get that much of a workload whenever they're splitting this stuff. So I think the big takeaway is slight lean to Tracy, but Singletary has not gone away. Like he's still... It's more, if you had to categorize it as something, it's still more of a 1A, 1B scenario.
Is it like Seattle? Because Singletary scored the 2 rushing touchdowns. He even got stopped at the 1-yard line before Jameis got hit. So Singletary's just dominating the inside the 5 stuff?
Yeah, he had 3 of the 4 carries inside the 5-yard line. Jameis had the other one today.
Oh my gosh. It's probably like my most annoying running back split. So like every other drive, a true 1A, 1B, but just literally taking out Tracy, who was playing fantastic, dude. He had a week high 10 missed tackles forced. The only running backs to do that this year, again, double-digit missed tackles forced in one game. Bijan, Gibbs, Achane, Genty, Etienne, and Tyron Tracy. Like that is literally your list now. Could not buy a carry, inside the 5-yard line though. So maybe one day, but yeah, going to be the Lions next week. Going to be a big-time dog regardless of who is under center. I have a hard time believing with that sort of usage, we're going to be absolutely dying to get either Tracy or Singletary in our lineups, but still a good performance from Tracy, someone who obviously a lot of people spent a lot of fab on here in recent weeks. Moving along, we had the Bears take down the Vikings, the cardiac Bears with another fourth quarter comeback for the ages, or, they just kind of avoided losing to J.J. McCarthy, which is always a good thing too. Bears obviously won outright as 2.5-point dogs. Under did cash with ease here at 48. So Caleb Williams now, Dwain, NFL high 5-game winning drives. This edition basically consisted of a long kick return by Devin Duvernay and then DeAndre Swift doing some running around. So yeah, still goes in the stat book as a game winning drive, but obviously, whatever. Either way, Caleb didn't see the huge boom passing production wise that we were maybe hoping for in a tougher matchup. The drops haven't helped. There were 3 more of them today. Honestly, though, I just continue to be mesmerized with this dude's ability to get away from sacks. He did take 2, but man, must have avoided another 4 or 5 out there. So just great stuff from Caleb, extending plays and doing his thing. It's just, man, DJ Moore, the ball's hitting him in the chest, 15 yards downfield. Like there were some misses early from Caleb. Don't get me wrong. I think the first 2 drives, even like clean pockets, 3rd down, had Rome open deep, wasn't able to put the ball on him. So not perfect, but just would have liked to be able to take a newfound leap of faith with Caleb in a tougher matchup. I don't think we're quite there yet. I do think who we can take a newfound leap of faith with, though, Dwain, Luther Burden. Did we actually see a rookie unleashed in Chicago here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we can say unleashed, but he took over the wide receiver 3 role. So he only had 5.7 PPR points today, but 61% route participation with an 18% target share. Olamide Zaccheaus had a 19% route participation. I went and looked everywhere, couldn't find anything about an injury with Zaccheaus. I don't know if you saw anything. So it does feel like this was a takeover by Burden of that wide receiver 3 role. And then you talk about the fact that DJ Moore sucked. Like, look, I've liked DJ Moore for his career. So guys, I'm not just like a guy that dogs on DJ Moore, but he's been terrible this year. Like he's not been good. So like the door is open here for Burden to even take on potentially a little bit more as we go. And he will need to really be valuable in fantasy. Now, having said that, like Zaccheaus, like he was scoring fantasy points in this role. Yeah. No one wanted to talk about it because his name wasn't Luther Burden. And you've pointed it out many times, Ian, but I mean, he was giving people 10 to 12 PPR points in that role. And if Burden's more explosive, like who's to say you don't get more than that? But I definitely think he is a waiver wire priority, this week. And that you guys are playing in deeper leagues. If that's the case, if you're like in an 8-team league where you're starting 2 receivers and 2 running backs, like Burden, fine if you want to stash him, but you guys playing in these 12 teamers where you got like 16 people, on your roster, like Burden needs to be rostered in those leagues.
Looking kind of like the wide receiver 3 ranks, kind of that wide receiver 30 or 36 this week. We had the 49ers wide receivers, Jordan Addison, Trey Tucker, Deebo Samuel, Parker Washington, Calvin Ridley, RIP, Keenan Allen, Xavier Worthy. Ridley's not actually dead for the record, but he did hurt his fibula. So I think that could be Luther Burden, Dwain. I'd maybe like to see a performance first. I guess.
Yeah, I'm gonna have him in the wild. I'm going to have him as a wide receiver 4 this week. But
Okay.
remember, I mean, he's been a wide receiver 6, which is just
Yeah.
essentially a stash play only. He's now moved into playable territory, especially for you guys that play, in 3 wide receiver leagues with the flex, or 2 wide receiver with 2 flex leagues that are PPR. We got buys coming up. We got 4 more teams on bye this coming weekend, and there's there's going to be some decent receivers out. We got Denver, we got the Chargers. So Chargers, you got 3 guys that people have been using. You got the Dolphins, Jalen Waddle. Washington, you only got 1 really with Debo, but with Denver, a lot of people have been playing Sutton and Troy Franklin. So that might be enough to get him close to that wide receiver 3 territory this week. It could be close, but I would say if you're just looking at him zoom out view, if we had to call him something today just for the rest of the season, I would say Luther Burden's a wide receiver 4 with upside.
I'll just say, man, eye test wise, and we can even talk about some of the underlying numbers. I think Luther Burden's been one of the more impressive rookie receivers out there. I mean, it was just surprising to see him not get more opportunities. Ben Johnson talked about it and gave him more opportunities, but he led all rookies in yards per out run going into this game. I mean, the only 3 rookie wide receivers entering this week with the targets per out run north of 22%, which is a very high number, were Luther Burden, Tedero McMillan, and Emeka Ibuka. That's it. Like, he has looked the part of a legit, awesome rookie receiver, just hasn't had those opportunities, but maybe, just maybe, they are on the way. Of course, that could impact Rome Odunze, Dwain, who put forward a pretty much another dud at the office. Again, not all on him. Caleb missed him when he was open a few times. So hopefully Papa Odunze gets back on the old Twitter sphere and starts talking that smack again. But man, just looking to next week, the Bears are going to be facing a Steelers secondary that we do want to try to attack here. I think that could be the get right spot that he needs.
Yeah, and here's the thing with Odunze. We've actually talked about him every week for the last 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, we talk about everybody anyway. So hopefully you guys enjoy that aspect of our show, is that we pretty much touch on every name. But Odunze, it's been like boom, bust, boom, bust, boom, bust. And this was a bust week. Gave you 6.1 fantasy points, but he still led the team with a 21% target share. He had 6 targets on the day. 41 receiving yards. I get it, guys. Not ideal, but man, he still had 144 air yards. So like the intent was there. It wasn't quite clicking. He's the wide receiver 1 for the Bears. Just make no mistake about it. It's just that things are a little bit up and down. It's like you said with Caleb. It's like we like what we're seeing with Caleb, but he can still be a bit sporadic. They like to run the ball more now. So there's just, there's some factors since the bye week that are obviously just making things a little bit more volatile for Rome Odunze, but he's still the wide receiver 1 on this team. He's a strong wide receiver 2 in fantasy. I think if you're a bull right now on Odunze, you're saying a mid-range wide receiver 2 the rest of the way. If you're more of a bear, it's really not that far off. It's probably a high-end wide receiver 3. He is a bear. So, I mean, low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. I think he actually has a pretty tight range. And it's just because we've consistently seen now, like, that, great, you can get this 6-pointer and next week you get 20.
I will just say, man, we highlighted him before the Giants game because he has kind of these extreme man zone splits, and they like to go to him against man coverage. Killed against the Giants, went off against the Lions back in week 2, and now he's going to get the Steelers, man. Rome Odunze. Literally, when I started talking to you about this, Dwayne, I was like, are we going to downgrade him? And then I saw the Steelers, and the mind just started going, bro. Rome Odunze, wide receiver 1, at least for week 12. Lock it down. Meanwhile, in the backfield, sure seemed like it was just the same thing we saw last week. As much as the world wants Kyle Monangai to become a thing, he did score a touchdown, and let's face it, his role has grown. It's still pretty comfortably 60-40 in favor of DeAndre Swift.
Yeah. This is the role Monangai's had for the last 3 to 4 games where Swift has been healthy. He outscored Swift today, 10.7 PPR points versus 9, but it's not like Swift played bad. Swift had 90 yards rushing today, guys. His yards per carry, 4.3 versus 1.9 for Monangai. Now, some of that for Monangai is because they were giving him some of that work down in close, letting him take the short yardage stuff, which you obviously have a lower yards per carry on once you adjust for those things. But yeah, 58% of the snaps to Swift, 37% to Monangai, 57% of the attempts to Swift, 32% for Monangai. So, yep, still pretty much the same split that we've seen over these last 4 to 5 games when Swift has been healthy.
The saddest item here, Cole Kmet, Bears leading receiver. Colson Loveland droppable at this point, Dwayne?
Yeah, I was going to say, on one hand, we get Luther Burden potentially emerging, right, and getting his breakout. And Colson Loveland, who we thought was emerging a few weeks back, is now going in the opposite way. Cole Kmet had a 72% route participation and absolutely got tagged multiple times. I don't know how he escaped this game without getting another concussion. Thank God. We don't want people to get concussions. Cole Kmet is not nimble of foot. He gets railed on these things. He's also he's a pretty dude. Also, they were showing this one shot. I was like, man, look at that hair. I like some good hair, Ian. But looking at Loveland, 58% of the it's late. 58% route participation for Colston Loveland, 14% target share. So yes, if you are playing in a shallow league, you're not holding on to Loveland right now. The breakout, look, it could still happen, guys. It's a split tight end room right now, and it can kind of ebb and flow back in between these two guys. The bottom line is it's really hard to trust either one of them. If you're in a deeper league, obviously you're just holding. If you're tight end premium, 20 roster spots like FFPC, you're not dropping Colston Loveland in that kind of format.
Again, Bears facing the Steelers next week. Could be the sort of matchup that gets someone, more than Rome Odunze going, but that remains to be seen. Over for the Vikings, just 3 for 11 on third down. Only had 23 minutes time possession. Honestly, this offense was looking absolutely horrific for large portions of the game, although J.J. McCarthy, captain comeback, if you will, did get things going and briefly got them to lead late. Had a nice touchdown to Jordan Addison in the end zone, who previously had done, I believe, absolutely nothing. He did actually drop the best throw of the day from McCarthy. It was this absolute, piss rocket down the middle. Could have been good for 40 or 45. I think I'm done saying good things about JJ McCarthy. That's all I got, Dwain. Again, you can point out the player or two. You can tell it any quarterback. We had this conversation about Bryce Young, every other week. So just 2 interceptions, one of which was horrific. The other one I'd be willing to say was just more of a great individual play by the Bears corner, going up over Addison in the end zone. So whatever, but just there were 6 drops on the table. It's the dude's 5th start. I'm not trying to come here and just write off his career like everyone wants to do seemingly every time he goes out there, but it was horrible. It was horrible, and he looks horrible, man. I would take J.J. McCarthy over Justin Fields as a pure passer. I'm not sure if I can name another quarterback right now.
Yeah, and look, he's a young player. We're not trying to write him off forever, guys, but I think at this point for this season, we just have to call it what it is. I mean, you have a really good shot that you're getting 150 passing yards out of this dude. That's essentially what we've seen in most of the games, except last week, where he actually had a bigger passing game. 1 touchdown, 2 picks today. Didn't run the ball today either. You got 6 fantasy points out of him. But the bigger impact is obviously what it's doing to Justin Jefferson and Addison. And we've already really covered that in the previous shows, so I won't go too deep into it here. Just know it was another bad day. 11.1 PPR points for Jefferson. Intent is there. 28% targets, 9 targets on the day. We can live with that. But only 5 receptions for 61 yards. So that catch rate, still not great. Like you said last week, Ian, it's not like that's in the worst territory versus some other wide receivers. We could still probably get by. And Addison, to your point, really could have had a bigger day today. The dude, he had 143 air yards. He only caught 2 balls for 20. So that tells you that Addison left a lot on the table. Not all his fault. But yeah, man, it's Justin Jefferson. Last week, we downgraded him to low-end wide receiver 1. Do you have the guts to move him down any further?
Let's see. Again,
it'll be tough with 4 teams on bye, so ignore that part. Just say, hey, rest of the season outlook. What do you think about Justin Jefferson?
So this week, I had him behind guys like Nico Collins, Jalen Waddle, Emeka Ibuka. He was in the same tier as Lab McConkey and George Pickens. The next tier down was T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, Rome Odunze, and A.J. Brown. I don't think I have the balls to move him past that tier. I can move him into that tier, though.
Yeah, I think he's somewhere right in that range, and we still respect the fact that he's a baller, but we really need McCarthy to get things going. So,
which, hey, young quarterbacks, guess what? They get better with more experience. So, not trying to completely close the book, but certainly has not been the start that any of us, especially Thor Nystrom, has been hoping for. I will say Justin Jefferson, sweet block on the Jordan Mason touchdown run. That's how you freaking go take out your anger, young man. Love to see that. And also we'll note in a less positive light, now 7 targets this year to Justin Jefferson have been intercepted. Nobody else is even over 5. 5 of those targets have been from J.J. McCarthy in particular. So not good, not good, not good. Otherwise, Dwain, sure seemed like it was mostly the Aaron Jones show. Again, Jordan Mason was running hard and then got that touchdown, but sure seemed like despite not having, the big time performance we were hoping for, Aaron Jones still looking like an RB2 more weeks than not moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, he gave you 11.1 PPR points. It was a tough day, but 67% of the snaps versus 17% for Mason. So, I mean, it's very clearly Aaron Jones is the lead running back. Jordan Mason is the backup. Mason had 27% of the attempts. Jones had 73%. Jones is out there for more of the pass stuff. So Jones had 16 carries today and 6 targets, man. I mean, 22 opportunities. Like, it's just right. And now it happens to be on a sucky offense, and all that points back to McCarthy really struggling. But Jones is getting his opportunities, definitely.
Again, not going to be the easiest matchup here coming up, but the schedule is nice for the pass game moving forward. Again, they got the Packers and Seahawks these next 2 weeks. That's not good. They're on the road both times. They close the season, though, with the Commanders, Cowboys, Giants, and Lions. So hopefully they can get their stuff together between now and then. On to an instant classic, Dwayne. I cannot wait to just rewatch this one with my kids one day. We actually had the Houston Texans take down the Tennessee Titans 16-13. Titans, they cover us 5.5-point dogs, so good for them. The under cash with ease at 37.5. So just another Davis Mills masterclass. I'm done. All right. 274 yards, 1 touchdown, found Nico Collins in the back of the end zone. That was cool. Christian Kirk, Jaden Higgins got stuffed just short of the goal line. Honestly, Dwayne, I've maintained that CJ Stroud was a really good real life quarterback, even as he's fallen off in his second and now halfway through his third year. And he still did some good things this year. I thought you actually brought up some really good points about that in the ranking show before we had to pivot because CJ Stroud wasn't playing. Something that, again, seems to be on the table ahead of a short week. They face the Bills on Thursday Night Football, but I started getting a little bit alarmed. It's the same thing with Jacoby Brissett and Kyler Murray. When your number one receiver starts putting up big time numbers that he wasn't before with the backup, I start paying attention to it.
Yeah, I do too, but it's 2 games. It can also just be a small sample thing. I mean, we know that CJ Stroud likes Nico Collins, but it's kind of weird that it has not been a good year for Nico Collins with CJ Stroud, but 24.2 fantasy points today with Davis Mills, 25% target share. The other thing for Nico, and we mentioned this last week, in these last 2 games has had much more of a wide receiver 1 full-time role. 89% routes this week. Last week he was at like 92%. Man, there's been tons of games this year where he's like 75 to 80%. So just remember that too. That is also another factor. They're actually coaching staff, I guess, apparently like had a great epiphany that they would actually want to play like the one of their highest paid players. It's one of their best players on their offense. They actually want to get him on the field. So that's also part of what's going on here with Nico Collins. So, but I think the good news is like, we know that Mills can't support him. So that feels good. I'm not going to worry about it too much though when Stroud comes back. Like I'm going to assume that like, okay, keep Nico as playing time and we'll get cooking with Stroud as well. If we get a couple of games of it being bad, maybe we'll revisit the topic. One other thing I would say here, we mentioned it last week, Ian, is Jaden Higgins' role continues to expand. He was the wide receiver 2 today for the team. 9.5 PPR points, 57% route participation. Not high enough, guys. We can really trust him. You still have Christian Kirk at 55%, Hutchinson at 53%, Noel at 30%. So it's basically Nico Collins, a bunch of other people rotating, for the other 2 wide receiver spots. But like he's just been playing a little bit better here over these last 3 to 4 games. So in deeper leagues, guys, Jaden Higgins is a name that I do like down the stretch, where it could all of a sudden be next week we see, oh man, 85% route participation rate for Mr. Higgins, and we would like that. He had a 26% targets per route run today, 106 air yards, 15.1 average depth of target. So just looking like he's starting to come into his own, as a rookie.
Got tackled at the 1 yard line too on one of his catches, so could have been an even bigger day at the office there. So yeah, and Jalen Noel too. Even if he's not been putting up the same sort of numbers, I know Matt Harmon just came out with some of his always awesome reception perception stuff. And Noel, man, bright green, I should say, charts going on with his ability to separate. So yeah, I think they could have found a pair of solid rookies in these Iowa State Cyclones. Just might take Xavier Hutchinson and Christian Kirk being out of the picture in 2026 and beyond to truly see the highs there. But yeah, man, in the meantime, Nico 10, 11, 15, and 10 targets in these last 4 games. Hopefully your fantasy team's still alive enough to benefit from, again, these big performances he's been putting forward. Otherwise, contractually obligated to say good job. Dalton Schultz caught 6 of 9 targets for 51 yards. Maybe not giving you true booms, but he certainly is doing nice enough. I think the last question, Dwayne, would be what we saw from this backfield that sure seemed like it was dominated once again by Woody Marks, even though, we weren't exactly getting fantasy points. This is why we just need to play points per usage. Fantasy point usage leagues, Dwayne. They're the future, okay?
We will start a utilization format. Yeah, so look, Marks gave you 6.1 PPR points today, but I came away actually like feeling better about his role because last week it was a blowout loss to the Jaguars, well, trailing script that they came back in with Davis Mills. And so we didn't know for sure, like, was that just due to the way that game played out? But that wasn't the case in this game today. And while the Titans made the game closer, it's not like they were leading, the Texans this whole game. So even though Woody Marks only gave you 6.1 PPR points, he did dominate the usage, Ian. 66% of the snaps, 86% of the rushing attempts, 36% route participation, a little bit lower than what you would expect. But there might have been something going on with the data, and True Media. We'll look at it again tomorrow because none of these guys had very, very high route participation rates. It also could just be because their offensive line sucks and they keep their guys in to block. That is also a possibility. So Marks, yeah, like when you hear all those numbers and that's 2 weeks in a row of that kind of usage, I will definitely be, moving him up as far as the way I handle him in the projections the rest of the way. Nick Chubb only had a 25% snap share today.
I'd like to see a little more just out of Marks the talent, but we talk about it, man. Quinshon Judkins goes from looking like a world beater, averaging 3.1 yards per carry per month. I don't think Judkins magically got bad at football, so I'm not trying to just assume it's not going to be great for Woody Marks. And more importantly, man, he gets that Buffalo Bills run defense, as we saw today, can be completely exposed by, generational talent. And Sean Tucker, obviously, but maybe, just maybe, Woody Marks can do his best impression. So, again, that one is going to be on Thursday night. And yeah, man, I think Woody Marks, particularly with the bye weeks being back in heavy, is going to be comfortably inside that top 20 in a recommended start in far more lineups than not. Over with those Titans, rough performance, particularly with the injuries. Calvin Ridley, broken fibula, out for the season. We also had Chimere DK. Apparently, he cleared the concussion protocol. It still took him out for the game, but he did sustain a chest contusion.
Too. Yeah.
So hopefully he's okay. Doesn't sound long-term. We'll see what happens. And even Alec A. Manor was in and out of the medical tent at one point, but I do believe he returned to action. We've seen good games from DK, Dwain. I would like to think maybe we could see some more. Next week, the Titans play the Seahawks. If you had to bet on them scoring a touchdown, I'd probably take the no. I want nothing to do with this team. We haven't wanted anything to do with them all year.
Yeah, like when I project them, like because I go through the phases of the way I work through the projection, and the first thing like that I get to is like the team view where we have touchdowns projected, and every week, like this is the absolute most red square on the spreadsheet. Whenever I see total touchdowns projected, sometimes I feel so bad for them. I'm like, should I just manually boost them a little bit, like just to make them feel a little better?
Still like last week, a little better.
Yeah, like the model just doing its own thing before I make any intervention. Last week had them projected for 0.95 touchdowns. Like there's no other team even close. But that's the way they've been. They've been terrible at scoring touchdowns. So I just kind of let the model do its thing on that one. So yeah, I don't think there's much to really cover here, other than DK was out due to the injury. I do expect him to be on the field full time once he's healthy. So maybe he gives you something, but it's a dumpster fire, man. Pollard, Spears still splitting. Spears gets passing down. Pollard gets the early down work. It's all pretty gross.
We saw Pollard do nothing even with a true workhorse role during the first month of the year. I do think Spears could do more with that sort of role than what Pollard has been doing. So because of that, I'm okay keeping Spears on the bench, but obviously not someone that you're feeling too good about. Moving on, one of the best games of the day, I would say the Bills took down the Buccaneers 44-32. Buffalo covered as 6.5-point faves. Over did cash almost only on the Buffalo side at 45.5 overall. So Josh freaking Allen, Dwain, now responsible for the top 2 fantasy performances from a quarterback since 2015, now has the highest scoring performance, I believe, of any player in the 2025 season. So 3 touchdowns through the air, 317 passing yards, and also chipped in 3 touchdowns on the ground. And honestly, like he was even talking after the game. He was talking about some of the plays they left. Like he threw a really bad interception from his end zone early on in the game, had another interception on 4th and 2 where he kind of tried to force it to Dawson Knox and it got tipped around. I mean, this was a game without Dalton Kincaid and Keon Coleman, who I think most reasonable people expecting to be 2 of his top 3 targets for the season, and honestly have been for most of the season, despite, Keon's not exactly being fantastic with his opportunities, to put it nicely. So just the fact that Josh Allen can walk into this and account for 6 touchdowns and over 350 total yards, and I don't think it was necessarily the greatest real life game he's played. He's pretty good, Dwayne.
Yeah, but he's one of the few people, right, that can just lift everyone around him. We've got Khalil Shakir, Josh Palmer, Tyrell Shavers. Most people don't even know who that is. Gabe Davis returning to the lineup. And look, a lot of the passing volume went through the running backs today. So he just finds a way to make it happen when he needs to, playing a pretty stiff run defense that was bottling up James Cook. Baker Mayfield and the Bucs were making it competitive until late in the game, and Allen just took it to another gear and basically said, "Hold my beer, Baker." Your comment about my small hands, I heard that. I heard that comment that you made about me, Baker, and 43 PPR points today for Josh Allen, the number one, he QB1 in fantasy. Yep.
Everybody eats, aka Josh Allen. Please be Superman if you don't mind and elevate everyone else. I will say, Ty Johnson, 52-yard touchdown on a short screen, outran everyone. That was pretty cool. Also credit to James Cook for his own receiving touchdown. Cool little play action wheel design. Got him matched up on defensive end, and guess who's going to lose that battle every single time? That slow defensive end who cannot keep up with James Cook. So good seeing them actually rediscover that, yes, it is in fact legal to throw James Cook the football here in recent weeks. Otherwise, man, I mentioned Keon Coleman being out because he apparently missed a team meeting on Friday. Saw him still dancing, in street clothes before the game. I don't know. Maybe not the coolest thing to be doing. Keon, would love to see you get back out there on the field. So we'll just kind of have to see what happens in the meantime. Josh Palmer, I'm assuming Dwain was in a full-time role, but even, Bills. Oh, he wasn't?
What? They just rotated everyone, man. 49% routes for Palmer, 46% for Gabe Davis, 42% for Tyrell Shavers. Khalil Shakir was only at a 67%. You had Curtis Samuel at 49%. Also had Elijah Moore as a scratch, for this game. So the most full-time role we had was Dawson Knox at 82% route participation. He gave you a big fat 3.3 PPR points. So just so tough to trust anyone from here. Shakir's typically going to be fine, Ian, as like a floor play. He's going to give you like 12 PPR points a lot of weeks. But honestly, like if you told me Josh Allen threw for 317 yards and 3 touchdowns, I would have thought Khalil Shakir would have scored more than 0.7 PPR points. Like that would have been my guess.
I would have expected like positive yardage, Dwain, maybe worst case 0 yards. I don't think I would have landed on -3 like we got here. So I will say before this one, guys, the previous 6 games, Shakir had caught 5, 6, 3, 6, 7, and 7 passes. So I know it doesn't help you feel better about today, but ahead of Thursday night against the Houston Texans, he will be back in that low end wide receiver 3 range. But I'm with you, man. It's Josh Allen and James Cook. Otherwise, and especially in a tough matchup like that, wouldn't be really risking it for these other dudes. Meanwhile, over with the Tampa Bay fighting Baker Mayfield, 173 yards and a touchdown for Baker through the air. And we also got the return of Baker, the rusher, Dwain, right? When I, was saying last week, he must be going through something horrible with his leg we don't know about. 39 yards and a touchdown on the ground. So maybe you're just saving it for a big time game. He didn't seem any worse for the wear. But 0 rush attempts between weeks 7 through 10, people. So it was good to see this back from Baker. And it's a good reason why I hope he can get back to providing us legit QB1 production here the rest of the way. That said, Dwain, the real star of the show, Mr. Sean Tucker, 106 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, another 34 yards and a touchdown as a receiver. As our fearless leader over here at Team Fantasy Life, Matthew Berry, says, free Sean Tucker. And it sure seemed like he was being freed to get a lot of touches, Dwain, even though Rashad White still seemed pretty involved in terms of total snaps.
Yeah, and we talked about this last week on the show that we thought Tucker was probably about to be the lead back on the ground anyway last week, and then the game script just really got sideways. But early in that game, they were going to Tucker, and then the week before they had used Tucker as well. So 56% of the rushing attempts today for Tucker versus 29% for Rashad White. Now, Rashad White still led the way in snaps, 59% versus 46% for Tucker, because he's getting the passing down work. He had the 61% route participation, 100% of the 2-minute offense, and Tucker was not out there for those plays, only a 27% route participation rate. But does look like, until Bucky Irving's back at least, Tucker is the guy they prefer to have on, handling the early down work, as long as the game script does cooperate. Looked amazing today, 34 PPR points for you today. If you play in Scott Fishbowl, which I do, he gave me like a 50 burger over in that weird scoring format. I always get blown away when I look at those scores. I have Josh Allen on the same team, and I was like, oh my God, I got like 100 points from these two guys. But he had 105 yards, 5.6 yards per carry. Also got him a receiving touchdown to go along with his 2 rushing touchdowns. So I would say Sean Tucker, at this point, like boom bust running back 3, if we don't have Bucky Irving, like maybe high end running back 3, Ian. Game script's still going to matter, for the guy, but he's playing well when he gets his opportunities. We've seen him do this in the past, actually, and in the games where he's actually had a role, Sean Tucker has scored fantasy points.
Rashad White, to his own credit, I thought was actually running pretty hard early on. Not as good as Sean Tucker, so I'm not, disagreeing with them, obviously riding the hot hand, but this still have 13 combined carries and targets. So could be a situation, Dwain, kind of like Seattle. It's not 1-for-1 the way they splice them up like they do in Seattle, but both these guys probably outside the top 24, but inside the top 33 or so.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the big thing to keep an eye on is does Sean Tucker performing so well potentially create more of a three-way split when Bucky Irving gets back, especially as they may ease Bucky Irving back into the fold. We know Bucky's their guy. Like they've clearly shown us that. But man, Tucker playing like this, sometimes it could mean nothing. We could see him go to a 2% snap share the first game that Bucky Irving is back. But theoretically speaking, like watching a guy ball out like this, you might think maybe we need to give him 10 to 15% of the carries. So just something we'll have to keep an eye on.
Bucks got the Rams next Sunday night. Certainly not going to be as easy of a matchup as this turned out to be. I don't want to take anything away from Tampa, but just, man, with some of these injuries the Bills have had in the front seven, this has been a run defense that has looked worse and worse as the season has gone on. And after this performance, man, they are now 30th in rushing EPA allowed per play, ahead of only the Bengals and Giants. That's not good when I don't list the Cowboys as a defense worse than you in pretty much anything, guys. So it really is tough for the Bills. And then it could be good news for Woody Marks. So otherwise, man, another dud for Emeka Egbuka. Had a good game coming out of the bye, but Tez Johnson, dude, still continuing to keep that lead in fantasy points since week 6. Unfortunately, Tez couldn't get going. The only thing I'll say, Dwayne, because we know Emeka Egbuka's good, and I don't know if Godwin practiced in limited fashion, so we'll see. But even if Godwin's back, I'm not going to let that, overly impact my thoughts on Egbuka, at least in the near term. The only thing for Emeka Egbuka, he only had a 4.7 yard average target depth, man. His previous single game low was 11. So this really did seem like a new roll.
Yeah, a lot of that was weather, though. It was really windy in this game.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I do think that was impacting like the way that they were using him and the routes they were putting him on. So I know Josh Allen overcame it, but he's Josh Allen. Like he's superhuman with superhuman strength. But even a lot of Josh Allen's long plays today were not necessarily, 2 of them were long throws, but he also had some short throws that went for a long way. So I'm not worried about Egbuka. I think the best thing to do is lean into like the data that we have already for the season. Having said that, guys, as you get later in the season, we see this sort of thing happen like at a macro level because the weather gets worse. Injuries are piling up. There's all sorts of factors that are really going on in the NFL, and you will see ADOTs at times come down. You'll see yards per catch at times come down. So it will come down to some of the games and where the Bucs have to play. Fortunately for them, their home stadium is a warm weather stadium, and even when it's cold, like they're typically not having really bad weather. So most of their games should still be fine. I'm not worried about Egbuka. He's a top 12 wide receiver the rest of the way.
By the way, guys, next week, all right, so like this week coming up, this will be the time, I think, if you want to stash the Buccaneers DST, go ahead and do it. We don't want to play them against Matthew Stafford on Sunday night. No, miss me with that. After week 12, though, Cardinals, Saints, Falcons, Panthers, Dolphins. You're not going to find a better 5-game strategy. If you want to keep rolling, which is like the Houston Texans or an elite defense, I get it. You will not find a better matchup-based DST than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers moving forward. So only other point, Cade Otton up to 53 scoreless targets on the season. He joins Jacoby Myers as the only guys with 50 plus. So we will see what happens there. But now, guys, time to get to our Xfinity best game of the week, brought to you by Xfinity. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy. Xfinity. Imagine that. The Panthers took down the Falcons again, 30-27. Carolina winning outright as 4-point dogs. And overtime, the over did cash here at 42. So Bryce Young, Dwayne, if you would have showed me this stat line like before the day and like given me 30 guesses to guess what quarterback would got it, 29th guess, maybe I get to Bryce Young finally. Against the Falcons defense, that was averaging the least amount of passing yards per game going in, 448 yards and 3 touchdowns. Even banged up his ankle early. He was doing it at less than 100%, and he looked pretty good out there, man. This was easily, probably just the best single game version we've ever seen of Bryce, and just easily this year, the closest we've seen him to looking like the guy we saw in the second half of last year. Are you willing, Dwayne, to throw away the previous 10 weeks of action and just embrace this 65 minutes of glory? Come on, man.
No.
No, me either.
But here's the thing. Like it's at least it's a good data point. Like, so
Yeah.
I mean, we don't completely throw it away, but it's not going to cause me to reverse course. It's impressive that it was against the Falcons, who were dealing with some injuries, coming into this game. But, they've been one of the top 5 pass defenses in the league this year. So it's not like Bryce Young just did this against no one. finally, just really decided that he was going to lock on to Tet McMillan and push the ball down the field to him. I saw a beat reporter from the Panthers talking about how the offense is broken because they throw the ball to Tet McMillan too much. No, the offense is broken because your quarterback sucks, man. And yeah, he throws it to the guy and he's not good enough to get it to him and help him, do what he needs to do. But it was a huge day for Tet. He gave you 33 PPR points today, Ian. 12 targets, 8 catches, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So I would love to believe in Bryce Young because you and I have a lot of Tet McMillan on our fantasy teams together. And this is kind of what we were, not that we think we'd get this from him every game, but this is the kind of boom like that we hope we might be able to get, once every 5 games, not once for the whole season.
Wasn't this huge change up in Bryce in terms of him throwing downfield? I mean, only had a 6.2 average target depth. That's pretty much in line with what we've been seeing him put forward more games than not. But yeah, man, again, 2 dimes and touchdowns for Terrell McMillan. Got another big game out of Xavier Legette. How about that? I mean, that's even possible in this economy, no less. So it was just a great game from Bryce Young. Took 5 sacks, whatever. But again, had the banged up ankle. Truly, truly impressive performance. And hey, next week, man, at the 49ers on Monday Night Football. Again, you're only playing Bryce Young if you're in an unfortunate situation in a super flex, but at a minimum, Dwain, seeing him actually enable T-Mac to go for 130 and 2, like now I'm actually feeling confident about taking T-Mac in those closer start-sit decisions ahead of a winnable matchup against the 49ers.
Yeah, and T-Mac's underlying data all year is basically that he's a buy low, but we have basically gotten to the point where like, can we say that anymore? Just because
I was nervous to say that.
With what we were getting. Yeah, I mean, well, plus people the utilization score continued to say it, because, there were certain elements that were there that made, T-Mac pop, in the utilization score. But at the same time, like I had even stopped saying it. I was like, I hear you, utilization score, but I'm not saying it again because I'm not getting yelled at. You can say it. But with Legette, 62% route participation. So he was actually the wide receiver 3 behind Coker at 78%. But like everybody, dude, 18.3 PPR points for Legette, 33 for McMillan, 11.2 for Coker today. Like all the wide receivers were doing their thing, which obviously when your quarterback throws for 448, everybody's going to look good. But if people were wondering the pecking order, it is Coker actually working ahead of Legette. I will say though, Legette is the guy that's shown that he can make the big plays this year, even though like his targets haven't been consistent or good. Like he just looks like a better player after the catch than Coker right now.
And look, Legette, I know he's a little bit of an older kind of 1-year breakout prospect, but he also, and again, this made him not a great prospect. And why a lot of people didn't think he should have gone first round was like, all right, why are you drafting someone with that profile that is a little bit more raw potentially? I know DK Metcalf was a comp thrown around a lot. He's looking like a big, fast guy, Dwain, which wasn't really the case for most of his rookie years. So, had 92 yards and a touchdown a couple of weeks ago. And no, I'm not saying we're booming up the ranks, but he's at least getting into that boomer bust wide receiver 5 territory, which, as a first-round pick, you'd like to think he'd be well past that by now. But hey, moving up in the ranks regardless. Needed to give a shout-out, Dwain, to our guy, Tommy Tremble's 54-yard catch around an OT. Do you see that shit?
Yeah, I did see it. And I was cracking up at the defender trying to get him down, figuring out like, how is he going to grab him? He's like trying to reach around his helmet, and he just couldn't get him quite down. So yeah, Tommy Tremble's coming through with the big catch, y'all.
Otherwise, another disappointing game from Rico Dowdle. That does make 2 in a row. I saw them using Chuba a little bit. The problem was Chuba had 2 drops to his name, wasn't exactly making the most out of his opportunity. So Rico nearly had a touchdown in the end of regulation. Like he stepped out. It must have been by like a blade of grass. So very close to being a bigger day. 37 was 45 yards, came after contact. This is now 2 straight games, Dwayne, where he hasn't been averaging to 5-6 yards. I'm just not as sure about Rico. Like, I don't know. Based on the other running backs ranked around Rico, I don't see them falling out of that conversation without like an injury at this point. I think if Rico has another mediocre game or 2, we could see them go back to a 50-50 Chuba split.
Yeah, I mean, it could happen. But still, like in a bad game, Rico gave you 15 fantasy points. And at the end of the game, he gave you a massive explosive play that was very nearly a touchdown. So I just still... that game was on a lot today on Red Zone because it was a really good game. And Dowdle, like to me, still looks like the better player than Hubbard. I mean, he and it's not close right now. 83% of the snaps today for Dowdle, 19% for Hubbard, 79% of the rushing attempts versus 17%. So I almost look at it as like, man, so 15 PPR points, like that's a bad game for Rico Dowdle? Because you know how up and down it can be, like 3 games versus 2 games. So I agree, keeping an eye on it. Like, we don't ignore it, but at the same time, like, just watching Rico Dowdle, like, he still looks good to me. Like, he's just not, some of the big plays haven't been there, but like, he still looks like he's still, like, got juice.
I hear you, but we know how up and down efficiency can be. And we saw that's what happened when Rico took Chuba's job. And I'm just wondering, like, this is a coaching staff that's already made that move. Who's say they couldn't do it? But I don't think Chuba's taken the job. That was the other point about bringing that up. So that's kind of the second factor that needs to happen. Hasn't been the case so far. So just, again, if you wanted to sell high as a legit top 10 running back, guys, another trade deadlines coming up here soon. We're going to have some extra content for that here on the Fantasy Life Show. Great spot against the 49ers next week. After that, though, Rams, he's still got to bye. Saints, Buccaneers, Seahawks. So not atrocious by any stretch, but I'm not going to be loving, playing Rico if this role decreases at all against the Buccaneers or Seahawks in weeks 16 and 17. But regardless, great stuff by the Panthers. Again, second time hanging 30 points on the Falcons. Heck of a day for Bryce Young to shut up some of the haters like myself. Over with the Falcons, meanwhile, got some injuries to worry about here. Michael Penix suffered a knee issue that could leave him out a bit. Dwain, 4 or 5 weeks ago, if this happened, I wouldn't be too concerned about the prospects of Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and the rest of these players, because I had a heightened sense that, hey, Kirk Cousins can be a passable quarterback here. Maybe even help someone like Darnell Mooney. He looks so atrocious against the Dolphins in that start, man. I think this could spiral into being a bottom 5 offense for Kirk Cousins. He looked bad today. So again, Bijan's going to be fine regardless. Drake London, as long as his knee is going to be fine, not believed to be major. We'll know more on Monday. It's Bijan and Drake, honestly, probably just them anyway with Michael Penix, but it's not good if we go with Kirk Cousins here.
Yeah, I wouldn't be excited about it. And even though Penix has been sporadic, like, we know that he'll feed London. Right. And so London still comes through in these games where Penix doesn't have like a really big box score. Kirk Cousins, much more of a methodical, gonna drop back, go through all my reads, might not be Drake London, so like that, it could hurt London, and London dealing with an injury on top of that now. This is terrible timing, to have Penix out and then London dealing with his own injury. And here's the thing, if London's out, it hurts the whole offense.
Yeah.
Because when you don't have to worry about Drake London anymore, and Darnell Mooney's been a disappointment this year, you're just going to try to take Bijan Robinson away in the pass game. He's still going to get his opportunities. He's Bijan Robinson. They'll figure out their ways to do it. But it could be a challenge for him, man. Bijan had 30.3 fantasy points today. And honestly had most of it in the first half. So yeah, no Penix would be a bad thing in my opinion. Kirk Cousins, 6 of 15 today, 48 yards, 3.4 yards per attempt. He looks completely washed.
I mean, he's never been this guy who's had a big arm or been much of a mover. But the problem is when you have that, you don't have much margin for error. So then you take 10% off of both, man. It really has become a tough watch. So Bijan Robinson, as you mentioned, a huge day, up to an NFL high 61 missed tackles forced on the season. Dude, if you think he's the number 1 running back on planet Earth, I certainly couldn't give
3 carries inside the 5, Ian.
Let's go. Yeah, because he got stopped at the 1.
2 touchdowns.
He scored after each and every one. So that was great to see there. Algier did get 1, but you know what? As long as Bijan's getting 2, Dwayne, I think we can agree. Algier can't get 1. Still very much one of the best handcuffs in football. Darnell Mooney also had a rib injury. Also had a broken collarbone in August. That kind of would have been nice to know. Very cool that this still happens in 2025. But yeah, man, otherwise a dud from Kyle Pitts. You got anything else for the Falcons?
No, Mooney, I'll just say 2 weeks in a row, the underlying data, looks like, okay, something could happen here for Mooney, but it hasn't. But 97% route participation today. So basically not leaving the field, and a 24% target share. So that was second behind Drake London. Kyle Pitts has out there, really huge route participation rate today for Kyle Pitts at 97%, but only a 10% target share. But if we had a game without London, obviously Mooney and Pitts are the 2 guys that we would expect to get more work. And again, Mooney's been getting the targets and stuff, but man, not catching a lot of it, right? And a lot of it is just not on the same page, whether it's Penix or Cousins. And he seems to he took another big hit today, like you mentioned. He took another hit after that knocked him out for a minute from this game. So, well, again, all I can say is it wouldn't surprise me given the underlying data if Mooney did suddenly pop and we're like, oh, okay. But what is pop? 70 yards and a touchdown? Like that was probably what we were hoping for.
Saints and Jets over the next 2 weeks, though. I mean, those are two matchups
true.
where you would think that could come to fruition. Dolphins were supposed to be one as well, and we saw how that worked out. So we'll see what happens. But either way, thank you to the Falcons and the Panthers for providing us with the Xfinity best game of the week, brought to you by Xfinity. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy. Xfinity, imagine that. On to the late afternoon slate. We had the Rams take down the Seahawks 21-19. Seattle did cover as 3-point dogs after Sam Darnold threw not one, not two, not three, but 4 interceptions. The under did cash here at 49. So we'll start off with the Rams, who, again, honestly, this game was not this close, but at the same time, you look at some of the numbers afterwards, and it's like, whoa, I'm kind of surprised the Rams won. 249 total yards. The Seahawks had 414. Stafford honestly just seemed like he was off from the get-go. I mean, they were only 2 for 11 on third down. They did convert 2 of their 3 fourth downs, but yeah, only 22 minutes time possession at the end of the day. So I know Devontae Adams had at least 1 or 2 drops out there, so he didn't necessarily help matters. But yeah, Stafford skipping in a potential touchdown to Higbee. Looked like he had Adams open. Just 130 yards and 2 scores on the day. Did mention the 1 to Adams, and he also did find Colby Parkinson later, but just wasn't the, I guess, amazing world-beating version of this offense that we had grown accustomed to seeing. Dwayne, did we see a limited version of Adams playing through that oblique injury?
96% route participation and a 30% target share, 81 air yards, but only 13% reception rate on his target. So, and I didn't get to see all of them. I just saw the ones that were on red zone, to be honest, guys. So I know I saw one on the first drive that was like a low throw on like a dig kind of route that Adams, on an in-breaking route from Adams. I saw another one later that was also on Stafford, but I didn't get to see all of them, whether some of it was miscommunication or maybe, it is something where Adams is still dealing with the injury. So not going to try to pretend like I can diagnose it. But the bottom line, he was out there. He had the targets. It just didn't work out today.
It is a hilarious stat line. 1 catch, 1 yard, 1 touchdown.
1 touchdown.
19 end zone targets though on the season now. George Pickens has 14. Trey McBride has 12. Those are the only guys over 10. So certainly not expecting Adams to be going anywhere in terms of, spending a lot of time in the end zone. Puka Nacua, a down day because he had freaking 93 yards, didn't score a touchdown. He did lose a fumble, which sucks, but just you forget about the guy for a second. It's like, oh, there he is getting the ball again, breaking 3 tackles. No concerns there. And then even in the running game, I mean, hey, Blake Corum had 8 carries, 12 for Kyron. They have shrunken it between them. But again, why do we still like Kyron? Because he's actually got better efficiency this year than he did last year. And he's in one of the higher scoring offenses in the league, found the end zone today. And yeah, usually 15 plus touches per week. Didn't quite get there today. It's still going to be more than enough. So we did see Blake Corum get stuffed 3 straight times at the 1 yard line. And then they called a timeout, brought in Kyron, and then Kyron scored. I do wonder if that could be, a sign of the future of them leaning a bit more on Kyron, but seemed like pretty much business as usual. Dwayne just, wasn't as efficient as we were used to seeing.
Yeah, nothing to really add there. What you just said it, like what we've seen over the last 4 weeks is really what we're getting with the Rams backfield. It is a tighter rotation than what we used to have, but it is still Kyron as the lead back, just not by as large of a margin, but very efficient this year. 7.6 yards per carry today and 91 yards. So yeah, pretty much the same thing we've seen for the last 4 weeks. Corum is big time handcuff, guys. He's one of the best handcuffs in fantasy.
100%. And he's still only, I think, roster was like 30% or less. Actually, I think it was south like a 15% because it was Algier that was closer to 30%. So yeah, stash Blake Corum if at all possible. With those Seahawks, mentioned the 4 interceptions from Sam Darnold. They were all of the bad variety, man. Honestly, although I'm not a professional quarterback coach, I really would have given him, the minus, if you will, on each and every one of them. Still found his way though, 279 yards and had them in a position for, I think it was a 61-yard field goal at the end. So not going to, exactly say Sam Darnold has turned back into a pumpkin, but there were the plays, man, where the pressure got in his face, the pockets weren't as clean as usual, and then you did see, or maybe Sam started seeing some of those ghosts again. That said, JSN still found his way to get 105 yards, had a silky smooth one-handed catch down the sideline. That dude is just incredible at football. Otherwise, Dwayne, I guess in the passing game, the wonderance would be, did we see Rashid Shaheed get that role expanded? Still no Torrey Horton here, although Cooper Kupp was out there doing his thing.
Yeah, 73% route participation today for Rashid Shaheed, 4.9 fantasy points. Cooper Kupp was still the wide receiver 2 at 82%, but to your point, we didn't have Torrey Horton. So we don't know for sure what's going to happen once Horton gets back. you would like to think since they traded for Shaheed and his skill set, like he stays in that role. But Horton had played really well, man, up until that point. So I hate to say this, but I think the best version of this offense would be JSN with Rashid Shaheed as the wide receiver 2 and Torrey Horton as the wide receiver 3 and Cooper Kupp as the wide receiver 4. Kupp just hasn't been able to get it going, this year, Ian. Like the targets are down, the efficiency's down, everything is just down for Cooper Kupp. I get it. Great guy, coach on the field, all those things, but just with the things that this offense does well, the play action, run after the catch, the deep shots down the field, like Shaheed, I feel like just gives you so much more tactical value for what Darnold does well. So we'll see what ends up happening. Right now, Rashid Shaheed is strictly a stash play, but he is a good fit for this offense if he were ever to find his way onto the field more.
I agree with you. I think that'd be fantastic. I don't think it's going to happen, though.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, no, I think if you had to bet on it, you would bet no, and Torrey Horton's going to water this thing down when he gets back.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be a split. But just remember, guys, like if you're playing in these deep leagues, it's fine. Like hold on to Shaheed, like because shit happens, man. We get wrong about this stuff, and they've suddenly given a full-time role, or somebody suffers an injury, knock on wood, and suddenly Rashid Shaheed, is out there in 2 wide receiver sets. Like with Darnold throwing the ball, like you're going to feel pretty good about it. Like the big plays would be potentially there. So.
Number 2 today was actually AJ Barner, caught 10 of 11 targets for 70 yards, getting peppered a little bit in that, again, ill-fated comeback attempt late. But did we actually see a role change here, Dwayne? Because, Elijah Arroyo has been pretty evenly involved here in past weeks.
Well, I think what we saw is a game script like this, which we have not seen very much for the Seahawks. What happens is Arroyo's role goes away. He had a 33% route participation today, where he's had many games where it's more like in the mid 40s, closer to 50. Barner had an 87% route participation rate. So in these games where the Seahawks, and who knows how many more of them they'll have like this, but if they're trailing, needing to throw the ball more, it does look like they prefer Barner in that scenario. He gave you 17.1 PPR points today.
And maybe a little bit of boost for Kenneth Walker in that same, sort of realm. I will say we finally found out what it takes to get him a goal line carry, and that's to be in comeback mode script where you literally can't take the time to take him off the field. So you got to run the line and then give him the goal line carry. So that was great to see. He got a touchdown there. Also had a 15-yard touchdown before that got nullified on a hold, bounced it, and that kind of happened. So I'm not saying he would have scored without it, but it was a good reminder, Dwayne, of just how freaking hard it is to tackle Kenneth Walker. The king of breaking like 4 tackles on his way to gaining 3 tough yards. But just, again, seeing some of the snap numbers in front of me, it didn't seem like there was a major difference in how these guys were being deployed.
No, what we can say is over the last 3 to 4 games, it is a slight edge to Walker instead of it being more of an exact split. So it's like you take what you get. We would like to have more, but we'll take what we're getting. 20.1 PPR points today from Walker. So finally we got a boom in the box score that was like worth having him in your lineup because there haven't been very many of those. Yeah. Honestly, you've just been praying for 10 points from Kenneth Walker. So nice to see him double of that up today. But to your point, still close. 51% of the snaps to Walker, 43% to Sharps. So it's still close, but a slight edge to Walker.
Seahawks will be facing the Titans in Tennessee next week. That should be a sort of game script to hopefully get both those running backs going. Again, the Rams got the Buccaneers on Sunday Night Football. Moving on, we had the 49ers take down the Cardinals 41-22. San Fran covering with ease as 3.5-point faves. The over did cash here at 48.5. Again, beat down. Really didn't even seem that close. And yet somehow San Fran only had 281 total yards of offense compared to 488 for the Cardinals. So we'll get to Jacoby Brissett's record-breaking day, actually in a good way here in a second. But first off, Dwayne, it was the return of Brock Purdy. He threw not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns, 2 to Kittle, 1 to Christian McCaffrey, who continues to get just way too wide open near the goal line. I know Kyle Shanahan's a great play caller, but yeah, it's like, I don't know, maybe track that guy no matter what. So 3 touchdowns on the day for McCaffrey, one of which actually happened right after a 99-yard kick return to start the game. So it was just cool stuff there, man. Obviously, seeing Brock Purdy back, got Kittle going, CMC continue to do his things. We also had Ricky Pearsall coming back, though, and he unfortunately goose-egged 1 catch for 0 yards. So was he in a part-time role in the first return to action, Dwayne?
No. 84% route participation, so 89% for Jennings. So he was right there with Jennings, and we saw Kendrick Bourne fall to 11%. So he was basically out of the picture. Demarcus Robinson was the wide receiver 3 with 48%. So I think better days ahead from Pearsall, probably closer to 100% than we think, because they gave him pretty much the role that he had earlier in the season. Didn't come through today, was more low ADOT stuff. They were just never in a need to try to push it. They did have one deep shot that they tried to get to Pearsall in the game, but that had kind of been his calling card earlier in the year. I remember us both being surprised. Like the average depth of target was like 15, 16, 17. He was coming through with all these big plays down the field. So I think those will still ultimately be there in the long run. Jennings more the guy working in the intermediate area of the field, probably gonna have a better target share than Pearsall if I had to bet on it. Going to be more the chain mover, but they could still be close, and I could still see Pearsall outscoring him because he could come up with some of those bigger plays and potentially score more touchdowns than Jennings. But the big story is just George Kittle, man. He's back. The last 2 games, 24.3, 23.4, and 24.7 today, PPR points, 23% target shares in back-to-back games. So it does look like Kittle is finally healthy. More of the low ADOT variety stuff, guys, not getting as much downfield stuff, but still doing yak stuff after the catch. Still just really fun player to watch. Even when he's blocking, even when he's in there blocking on the run, man, it's just a very fun player. So just starting to, we talked about Kittle being a buy 2 weeks ago after that one dud. That's probably over for you, but if you've got Kittle, man, like you're feeling great about it. Top 3 tight end rest of the way. You've got Trey McBride's number 1, as long as Jacoby Brissett's under center. Then it's Brock Bowers. Then it's George Kittle, right?
And it's George Kittle. My only concern was because he had said something about how like his hamstring had ripped off his bone. And I know some doctors were like, well, if that was the case, like there'd be no way you'd be back. But I don't know. He's George Kittle. He's freaking crazy, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. So again, just seeing the good production here. Maybe it did get ripped off the bone. Maybe it didn't, but he's obviously balling out either way. I am with you. Top 3 tight end the rest of the way, particularly given the schedule, man. Panthers, Browns, bye, Titans, Colts, and Bears wheels up for this entire passing game. So yeah, otherwise Brian Robinson, S tier, A tier, handcuff right up there with the Blake Corums of the world. Otherwise, I think we can talk about the Arizona Cardinals who, all right, this was the other big part of the game, Dwain. For the Cardinals, 17 penalties for 130 yards. For San Fran, 1 for 15. So a little bit of a difference in terms of maybe discipline out there. But hey, man, when Jacoby Brissett gets over 452 yards with an NFL record 47 completions. Yeah, man. Throw 2 picks, have some taunting penalties.
Is he the new Jameis? I feel like he's the Jameis this year. He's averaging 314 yards per game passing with 7.4 yards per attempt. He's averaging 2 touchdowns passing per game. I mean, he's a perfect fit for this offense, man. Like he is just absolutely balling out. And this is with Marvin Harrison Jr. out of the lineup, and Michael Wilson honestly looked better than Marvin Harrison Jr. in this game. Like Michael Wilson went freaking bananas. I had the nerve to put an under bet out on Michael Wilson at 47 yards. I mean, he only went off for like 700. He had 240 air yards today. 33.5 fantasy points from Michael Wilson. Do I think he's going to continue doing that? No, but I can't rule out him being valuable with Brissett under center, especially if, Marvin Harrison Jr. misses another game.
I am sorry to you guys this morning because whoever you asked me if you should start or sit them versus Michael Wilson, should have started Michael Wilson, I guess. I didn't have him literally setting the season record, season high, man, 185 receiving yards. Like, good God. I mean, that's just move Marvin Harrison Jr. out of the picture. I'm with you, man. There as well, but just
something like that.
Independent of all this, man, that's freaking crazy. So it's
he played great
performance.
Yeah. Look, this does not match what Michael Wilson's been for his career, guys. So you have to keep that in mind. Michael Wilson is available on most of your waiver wires. I would just say you can play it as aggressive as you want. Like my advice will be to not go overboard on Michael Wilson. But like if you're super strapped at wide receiver and like you need someone, I get it if you want to do it. You obviously know he's not going to score 33.5 fantasy points. You guys all know that. He's not going to average that. I would say Michael Wilson, knowing that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to come back in, the highest I could move him would be into wide receiver 4 rest of season outlook. Like that again, now you could have these boom games for you, but I think they're going to be tough to predict. Like, do you think he can just displace Marvin Harrison Jr. as the number 2? Like, I think it's possible. It's not like Marvin Harrison Jr. has been great. So it's in the range of outcomes that could happen.
Well, the other big thing was Zay Jones was out of the picture. So they really just didn't have, I think, another guy on the outside that they trusted. And as much as Jacoby can throw the ball 57 times and complete 47 of them, I would say that's an upper end outcome, go ahead and breaking that record. So, man, I thought I was being generous almost with Michael Wilson. I had him next to DJ Moore and Christian Watson, Xavier Worthy, Keenan Allen, those guys wasn't high enough. I could see getting them on a weekly basis without Marvin Harrison Jr., Dwayne. I could see high-end wide receiver 3. Like, we have Romeo Dobbs there, Cortland Sutton, Stephon Diggs.
Without MHJ, yes. But we know we probably, if we don't get MHJ back this week, we probably get him back the week after. So, yeah. I mean, look, if you wanted to make him a low-end wide receiver 2, and if Harrison's out this next game, I won't blame anyone. Like, because like when you show a ceiling like this, like you just have to respect it. I mean, you have to. And
it'd
again,
be like Kendrick Bourne, where it happens twice and then it goes away completely.
Yes,
or, who knows?
Exactly. And the thing is, Brissett's playing so good that he's showing he can elevate all these guys. Like Trey McBride's already good, but he's elevated. Trey McBride scored 28 points again. Like Trey McBride is like a wide receiver. Trey McBride right now with Jacoby Brissett is playing like a top 3 fantasy wide receiver, not tight end. He's playing like a top 3 fantasy wide receiver.
Another 115 and that tud for McBride. Again, just this game easily could have featured the Cardinals scoring 30 plus points. Elijah Higgins should have had a touchdown. He fumbled like the 1 inch yard line as he was trying to go through it. Bam Knight had a 60-yard touchdown run that got nullified on a hold that I did think was a little more ticky-tacky than the Kenneth Walker one we were talking about. So again, all the credit to Jacoby Brissett. We talked about this 49ers defense being a bit of a shell of itself. Again, they've lost so many key contributors in the front 7. Don't want to completely freak out there, but I don't know, man. They're facing the Jaguars next week. Trayvon Walker's already been out of the lineup. I don't necessarily think that's a group that's going to completely shut these guys down either. So Jacoby, Trey McBride, and as long as Marvin Harrison Jr. is out, Michael Wilson, we can get behind him. And of course, our one true short king, Greg Dortch. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention 66 yards and a touchdown. Dwayne, we're going to week 12. Greg Dortch, more touchdowns than Justin Jefferson. I'm just saying. That's a fact.
Wow.
Fact.
18.6 PPR points today for Dortch, 70% route participation. Only 11% target share, but made the most of it. And look, if Brissett's balling out and you're missing MHJ, Dortch is in that wide receiver 4 range.
And they use him in the wild Dortch. I don't know if they actually call that, but they actually do give him a snap or 2 per game, which just, again, makes me so happy. Last thing, there's still, I want a newspaper. I just care. I care for Trey Benson. I want to make sure he's okay. We have no idea. Amari DeMercado hurt his ankle. I guess Bam Knight's the feature back. I don't know, Dwayne. Michael Carter's back here leading the way, even though he can't even keep a roster spot throughout the course of any given week. Do you have any takeaways in this backfield right now?
Yeah, well, I can tell you what happened. DeMercado got injured on the 5th drive of the game. Prior to that injury, DeMercado had 50% of the snaps, 46% of the attempts, 53% of the routes, and an 18% target share. So he was leading the way. But Knight was right there with him, 46% of the snaps, 36% of the attempts. Those numbers are both lower than DeMercado, though. Now, again, guys, they got behind quick. And so DeMercado is the guy that's more likely to be on the field in those situations where you're going to need to be throwing the football. After the injury, though, to your point, now Bam Knight was coming into this game with an injury. He had been questionable during the week. It was Michael Carter with 70% of the snaps, and Knight had 30%. Again, trailing script. I think Carter basically stepped in the role that DeMercado was about to play for the whole game because they were behind by so much and had to go into comeback mode. I think in a more balanced game script, where it's close or not trailing by as much early, it's probably closer to like 50-50, between these guys. But you just need to know that even if you don't have DeMercado, they're just going to put Carter into DeMercado's role, right? And that's going to hamper Bam Knight.
I think with that, we can move on. 3 more games here on the Fantasy Live show. The Broncos took down the Chiefs 22-19. Denver winning outright as 4-point dogs. Under cash at 45 ahead of their Week 12 bye. 8 straight wins for Bo Nix and company. And honestly, man, I like getting sushi on Sunday night after these games, just kind of get out of the house real quick, come back in, grinding for this lovely show with my guy, Dwain. And I was like, all right, like that Broncos game, kind of like what was special about it? And I was like, oh, they kind of do the same thing, man, whether they're playing the Chiefs or whether they're playing the Raiders. Like, they're going to suffocate you on defense. Bo Nix is not going to blow you away until he makes several clutch plays in the fourth quarter. And the run game is usually good enough with whoever they're giving the football to at least, keep pace and put some points on the board. So I know it would have been a lot cooler if maybe we saw some fireworks here. But, man, 8 straight wins for this. We can talk about Bo Nix's EPA, yards per attempt, or whatever. Great job. That 20-yard completion is Sutton on 3rd and 15. Particularly impressive there. So, obviously has had some big time flashes against weaker opponents, and maybe we will continue to get those down the road. So good seeing Courtland Sutton getting back, at least doing something. 59 scoreless yards on the day. Also have Pat Bryant with 82 yards and Troy Franklin with 84 in his own right. Even caught a downfield pass, Dwain. It was incredible. So they almost connected on like 2 more. Of course, it wasn't like it was going to be a perfect day here. Week high 132 unrealized air yards for Franklin, but at least they come down with 1 bomb. So good to see you there. It was that Pat Bryant involvement, though, that surprised me, Dwain. Did we see a legit rise up the depth chart for Bryant, even in a game with Marvin Mims back in the picture?
No, really still the same role. 57% routes, 17% target share, 23% targets per route run, 57 air yards, 9.5 ADOT. He gave you 12.2 PPR points, but he is the wide receiver 3 right now ahead of Marvin Mims, who only had a 29% route participation rate. Saw Troy Franklin's routes come down slightly. We talked about that. Without Mims, he had been closer to the 90% mark. Back to really what we saw before, which is still fine, guys. He's at 81%. We'd like to see it closer to 90, but 193 air yards, 8 targets today for Troy Franklin. He was the leading scorer for the wide receivers with 12.4 PPR points today.
I think the big news, though, involves another rookie, and that was R.J. Harvey. Unfortunately, not doing his best Trayvon Henderson impression, just 50 scoreless yards on 14 touches. Saw way too much Jaleel McLaughlin from the beginning, Dwain. So what was the actual split between these guys? And, of course, everyone's favorite pass down back, Tyler Bidet.
Yeah, go by RJ Harvey. Played a tough matchup today, scored 8 fantasy points, but he had 61% of the snaps versus 13% for Jaleel McLaughlin. I thought those numbers were going to be closer. I was very surprised by that. Now, the attempts were a little closer, 58% though, almost 60% to Harvey, 32% to McLaughlin. So 50% of the snaps inside the 5 to Harvey, 46% route participation. So all of those numbers were up. He had 11 carries and 3 targets, so 14 opportunities. I think in a different game where they get more plays off, like you're talking about a guy that's in the range we're talking about, Ian, could be more like 15 to 20 opportunities. So I still think the big boom is coming for Harvey. He is the running back 1 for the Broncos.
Again, J.K. Dobbins on IR. Sounds like it will be of the season ending variety. I said maybe he can make it back for the Super Bowl or something. So R.J. Harvey after this bye very much could be someone continuing to populate our RB2 ranks. Just unfortunate it wasn't a bigger one today. But again, shout out to Bo Nix and the Broncos for once again getting that dub. Can't say the same for the Chiefs, man. 5-5, and they are going to do some serious winning to still make the playoffs, which is crazy to think about considering Mahomes has never done anything other than at least make the AFC Championship. So 276, a touchdown, and a pretty bad pick from Mahomes on the day, man. Threw it in the end zone. It was the same drive where he threw a pick 6 where, came off the board because of illegal contact and everything, but just wasn't the smoothest game. Of course, I think a large part of that was the Denver Broncos, even without Pat Surtain, still proving very much to be one of the league's better overall defenses. But, man, I'll say this, though, man. That interception, missing Xavier Worthy for what probably should have been a 65-yard touchdown, I think Mahomes has earned the benefit of the doubt, but that's a performance that other quarterbacks, man, we'd be ripping it to shreds.
Yeah, but it's Mahomes, and so we know it's probably just the outlier. 13.3 fantasy points from him today, so he didn't really help you in your lineup. But he's going to bounce back. It was a nice day for Kelsey. He gave you 24.1 PPR points today. Yeah. A 30% target share, led the team by far. He had 13 targets in this game. Even my wife, Amanda, she was like, I can't believe they're leaving Kelsey this wide open. I had to explain, well, they're trying to take away Rashee Rice and some of these other guys. But 61 air yards, caught the touchdown. So nice to see that from Kelsey. Don't think he's going to have, a lot of boom games like that. But still, Kelsey every week, he's like our tight end 7, tight end 8. I think he'll stay in that range. Down game for Rashee Rice, but it happens. 9.8 PPR points, still at a 21% target share. Xavier Worthy just continues to get squeezed here, man. 5.5 PPR points. Like, he is just really, really struggling to put up fantasy points since we got Rashee Rice back.
And honestly, it's okay. Well, he's getting the deep balls. I've made fun of the Bo Nix, Troy Franklin, like, just connection. Worthy and Mahomes are right down there. Like, they're both literally in the bottom 3, bottom 4. Xavier Legette's there as well. I mean, it is not good company that we're seeing Worthy in. So, again, this one was on Mahomes. Sometimes it's on Worthy. I'm not even trying to put individual blame on. It's just not working. So, Worthy definitely more of a boom bust wide receiver 4. I'm with you. Not worried about Rice. 2 drops. Got tackled like the 2-yard line. And just, we always see him. I think last week he had 4 catches, and I was shocked. Right back up here at 6. I really do think that's going to be, par for the course more at times than not. So, Tyquan Thornton caught a nice 61-yard pass. I do wonder if this offense would be almost better off just kind of subbing out Hollywood and letting Tyquan do his thing. But yeah, otherwise, you mentioned it. Kelsey continues to just look awesome, yak-wise, particularly this year. I thought he was going to be like more washed than ever, but if he wanted to keep playing even after this year, man, I don't think, he's incapable of doing so. Only other point would be Kareem Hunt certainly seemed to dominate this backfield. No, post-buy bump or anything for Brashard Smith.
Yeah, 13.2 PPR points. So not like lighting things up, but man, 82% of the snaps, 100% of the attempts, which was 13. Like, the Chiefs were throwing the ball in this game, but 65% route participation rate, 80% of the 2-minute offense. He had 2 targets in the game as well. So 13 carries plus 2 targets. You'll take 15 touches from a running back in the Chiefs backfield, man. I mean, you're going to have a low end running back too with that. And you're going to get some games where it could be more. We'll see what happens with Isaiah Pacheco. I know originally it was after the bye, they thought he would be fine. Then very clearly early last week, we found out that he was still going to be further away. So it's not like we had to wait till the end of the week to find that out. That I probably won't have Pacheco in the first run of the projections this week unless we get some sort of news that really indicates that, like, he's, looking a lot better heading into this next game.
And look, when we saw Pacheco come back last year, different injury and everything, but it stayed pretty well split between him and Hunt. Honestly, I'd be kind of surprised if it changes in a meaningful way, even if it seemed to possibly be trending that way before the injury. So maybe they get Brashard Smith involved more as a receiver. I don't want to hear any of you complaining about Brashard Smith not getting enough carries. He needs to average 3 yards per carry or more for that to be the case. It is not right now. So Chiefs are going to be facing a well-rested Colts team next week. Get your popcorn ready for that one. 2 more games here. We had the Ravens take down the Browns 23-16, but it was not easy, as evidenced by Cleveland covering that 7.5-point spread. The over cashed here at a lowly 38. Wow, they did get that over just barely. Lamar Jackson, horrible game. I could also see it being very difficult to try to throw a football when you got Myles Garrett breathing down your neck every other snap. He had 4 sacks on the day, 42% pressure rate. But yeah, 2 interceptions. One was a tip screen that kind of went off Keaton Mitchell's hands. The other one was tipping the line, intended for Mark Andrews. But it was rough, man. Almost got Zay Flowers his first touchdown since week 1. It was a good 50-yard gain. He just got tackled inside the 5-yard line. But yeah, man, it was a unfortunate moment for me, Dwain, just to make everything about me. I drafted a lot of Lamar Jackson, and I just looked away for a second, trying to watch all 4 games. And I see Mark Andrews running down the field for a touchdown. I'm like, oh, great. Finally got, a few points from Lamar. Like, let's see how they design this play up. And I just see Mark Andrews get under center, and I'm like, oh, no, they did not do this. And it was a very cool Wildcat play. But, yeah, 35-yard touchdown run on the fake tush-push thing from Mark Andrews. He had a touchdown. Derrick Henry had a touchdown. Nice 59-yard sprint. Proved that he is capable of clearing 100 yards against this stout Browns defense. Yeah, man, I'm willing to throw this one out because the Browns, as we've seen them do on several occasions this year, are capable of pretty much ruining even some of the best quarterbacks' days.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think there's any other big takeaways. The only other thing here is with Justice Hill out, it was Keaton Mitchell with 7.4 PPR points today, operating as the running back 2 with 27% of the snaps. He also had 6 carries and 3 targets in this game. If something were to happen to Derrick Henry, knock on wood, we do not want that to happen. I think that Keaton Mitchell, I'm not saying he's going to get, like 67% of the rushing attempts like Derrick Henry, but I bet he gets 45 to 50%, and he gets the most carries on this team. So Keaton Mitchell, also someone that you should consider as far as like the handcuff guys. Like, this guy's a big big time playmaker, man. He doesn't need 70% of the rushing attempts to make good on fantasy points with his opportunities, especially with Lamar. The big thing with Lamar, man, 4 carries for 10 yards. Like the rushing stuff, you just have to wonder if he really is still bothered, his knees and just the injuries he's been dealing with this year.
That was the thing, because last week when we were talking, I mentioned how he looked better running last week than he did in that initial Thursday night comeback, but then he missed last Wednesday because of the knee injury. So I wonder if that just kind of put him back in a bad spot. So either way, next week we're going to see the Ravens facing the Jets, which I'm sure will be a good opportunity for that entire offense to get right. But yeah, man, Keaton Mitchell, again, some of these guys, the Tyler Algiers, the Brian Robinsons, they're rostered, in like 30% of leagues. Keaton's like 1%. So even all you Skank League listeners out there, we appreciate you. You probably can actually go get some Keaton Mitchell. Last thing though, Dwain, no Rashad Bateman. Did we see full-time roles for Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely?
We did not. 68% route participation for Andrews, 61% for Likely. So basically in the ballpark that they've been in. It was Hopkins that got the bump up. He wasn't able to do much with it, 2.1 fantasy points, but he saw a 71% route participation.
Fair enough. Meanwhile, for the Cleveland Browns, 187 total yards. Dylan Gabriel was horrible until he got concussed, and then Shedeur Sanders was worse. If you have a strong opinion on Shedeur Sanders, feel free to keep it. He was objectively bad out there. Wasn't put in a good situation. Didn't get to practice with the first team. Did throw a nice ball down the middle of Harold Fannin. That's all I got. He was terrible. Maybe he'll be better one day. I kind of doubt it. In this season, Dwain, in this simulation that we call life, Quinshon Judkins is the only person we care about on the Cleveland Browns. And just once again, man, couldn't get things going. I don't think it's on him. 49 of his 59 yards came after contact, but I just struggled to also see that meaningfully changing here in the near future. So we are expecting Gabriel under center if he is healthy enough to suit up. Stefanski did say that will be the case in week 12. I don't think it really matters regardless. It's going to be probably the lowest or one of the lowest implied offenses regardless. The Browns face the Raiders though next week. Maybe Judkins get going then. It's going to be hard to move him too far down. That's all I got.
Yeah, I mean, 17 carries and 2 targets. So even in these game scripts, and this one, this was a close game, so we've also seen him though in these trailing scripts still end up around that range. And that's the big positive you have for Judkins, and just knowing that efficiency is something that can kind of come and go. I do agree with you though. The offensive line play has not been good. Like that carry he had inside the 5-yard line, like he was immediately stuffed like 3 yards deep behind the line of scrimmage. That was his one chance to score on the day. And obviously that did not go well. So Judkins, mid-range running back 2, can still pop off for a running back 1 performance, but because it's a terrible offense, he can also finish more as a running back 3 or running back 4, 5.9 PPR points today. So the floor is pretty low.
He had like 2 or 3 good runs on their second or third drive too. And I was like, oh, finally. Okay, we're getting things going again. Nah, this wasn't meant to be.
One final thing, it was Jerome Ford working ahead of Sampson again. We had seen Sampson for the 2 weeks before, and it had been Ford. We thought maybe Ford had fallen into a, really the RB3 role. Well, it flipped back today to RB2 was Ford, RB3 Sampson.
I was about to say Sampson popped off a nice 19-yard run. It was like, oh, cool. They're using him more. Answer is no. And with that, it's time for our DraftKings closing lines. I've teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you the ultimate way to tip off this NBA season. Right now, new customers who bet just $5 will get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. That's right, new customers bet $5, get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. Stack your bonus bets on same-game parlays, player props, money line spreads, and more, or stay in the action with live betting that brings every play to life. So here's your play. Download DraftKings Sportsbook, sign up with promo code FANTASYLIFE, bet just $5 and get 3 months of League Pass on us and $300 if your bet wins, paid in bonus bets. Thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring this. Let's make this NBA season one to remember. Sunday Night Football, the Eagles took down the Lions 16-9 in a thriller. Not really. Philly covered as 2.5-point faves. The under cashed at 46.5. So with Philly, we had a Jalen Hurts tush-push touchdown, and I think that was it, man. We got some field goals. They tried to pepper A.J. Brown with targets early. He got a pretty controversial defensive pass interference call that, I don't even think it's controversial. I think it was just a bad call. Refs wanted to go home at that point. Otherwise, wasn't too much going on in the Philly offense. Saquon looked, just eye test-wise, I thought faster than he had maybe all season long. Unfortunately, the one time he did get down the 1-yard line, well, you guys know what happens in Philly when that goes down. So, man, we got Hurts, who is going to score his rushing touchdowns and be fine. Saquon's going to get 20 25 plus carries, and he's Saquon. So who are we to doubt him? AJB, and unfortunately, even Devontae Smith probably going to just, not be great inside a pass offense. That has left us wanting more weeks than not. What say you?
Yeah, man, 41% target share today for AJ Brown, and you got 11.9 PPR points out of it. So, I mean, like, come on, like, you get 11 targets, like, you're expecting a 20-point performance from AJ Brown. So the targets were there against the defense that played more man coverage, which is something we thought could happen for the team. So ultimately, it's just a rotation between these guys. Jalen Hurts only threw for 123 yards. I think the biggest takeaway, like, from this game for me is just the Eagles defense has arrived. Like, they're hitting their stride. I mean, they just totally rattled Jared Goff. You guys watched the game. It's an island game. You saw it. They were in his face, just didn't have the time to make those deep crossing throws. Heck, by the end of the game, the dude couldn't throw the flat. And if he was trying to, it was getting tipped up in the air. Jalen Carter had 2. Somebody else had 3, the other defensive tackle. So, I mean, really good defense, man. So, like, they did this to the Lions, and they were available this last week on a lot of waiver wires. I bet they're still there because it's the Lions. No one probably wanted to start the Eagles against the Lions. It's not like the schedule gets great from here, but it is one of these defenses where you do wonder if it's just like, just take the defense that's playing out of its mind. And this Jalen Phillips addition is really meaningful. Like, it's helping them a lot. So yeah, Eagles defense looking really good, man.
And I'll say this, man, I don't think the offenses they're facing are like the ones that really scare me. And honestly, the Lions would have been. So kudos to the Eagles for overcoming that anyway. But Cowboys, Bears, Chargers, those offensive lines are probably going to eat alive. Raiders, Commanders. Okay, yeah, we're thrilled about that. And then the Bills in week 17 in Buffalo. I don't know. That could be some weather game. Who knows what happens? I would rather not start a defense against Josh Allen with a fantasy championship on the line. I get it. But man, we're talking about only one really, annoying game all the way up through the end of the fantasy season. So love that call out. And then I guess the only other thing I would have is just Tank Bigsby is a pretty good handcuff as well. Yes. Also not too highly rostered. So then for the Lions, again, we just saw the Packers get shut down too. I know the Packers have been a little more up and down the Lions this year, but I'm inclined not to put too much stock in this disappointing performance. We did have no Sam Laporta, who, man, went from just being like, I guess he's not practicing today to, he's on IR for 4 weeks. So that's not fun. But yeah, man, I guess just we saw those targets seemingly go mostly to Jahmyr Gibbs, with Jameson Williams still keeping a nice role.
Yep. Saw the targets for Laporta underneath now go to Jahmyr Gibbs in this game. He had 107 receiving yards. That is a best for his career. So Jahmyr Gibbs is a guy that they just got to figure out how to they just need to give him more touches, man. I mean, the dude is absolutely electric. As good as the Eagles defense is, when he had the ball in his hands, he was making them look bad. He was outrunning the angles. He's making the first guy miss.
Sometimes the camera guy couldn't keep the focus on him.
Yeah, that was a great tweet. That cracked me up. Yeah. Jameson Williams is the other thing here. Another good game, 19.7 fantasy points in a game where Goff completely struggled, man, and he's getting those crossing routes again. And we saw that there. He caught the ball, and what does he do whenever he has a little sliver of space? He turns it into a bigger area of space, and he took it to the house early in this game. So positives for JMO, sitting in that wide receiver 3 with upside range. And yeah, I don't think there's really any other takeaways. It was Brock Wright playing the most. So if you guys are in a super gross situation, Brock Wright potentially for you as like your tight end 2. I don't even know what kind of sicko league you're in if you have to play Brock Wright, but I'll just throw that out there.
I force you to give me Greg Dulcich like numbers every week. I wasn't even going to ask about Brock Wright. You went more sicko than me.
Yeah, well, just try to one up you.
Nice bounce back spot at home against the Giants here in week 12 for those Detroit Lions. I imagine Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff and company will be far better there. But I'm with dude, like watching that game, and maybe it was just because we were so starved for offense, it felt like more. But I looked up at the box score and I was like, Jahmyr Gibbs isn't at like 190 yards right now. It just felt like every time he touched the ball, man, like something crazy was going down. So yeah, turns out he is amazing at football. Who would have thought? With that though, we're going to sign off here on the Fantasy Life Show. We appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, if you like the show, then please like the show. Hitting that subscribe button always helps us out as well. So for Dwain, for producer Mick, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everybody.